Good evening, and welcome to our special meeting held here in San Benito County on January 15th, 2021 at 6 p.m. Let's have the Pledge of Allegiance held by Supervisor Bob Tiffany.
Ready, salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Acknowledge certificate of posting. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
5-0.
Aye.
Notice of temporary procedures for Board of Supervisor meetings.
Good evening, everyone. Members of the public who wish to speak during public comment, please press *9 or the raise your hand icon. Each member will have 3 minutes. Please state your full name for the record. Thank you.
Okay, before we start our regular agenda, I wanted to just bring a couple of things to light. The first one is I'd like County Council to differentiate between a regular and a special meeting, please.
Yes. The regular meetings are established by the Board of Supervisors, I believe normally by resolution. They're the regular dates that the board meets. Regular meetings require 72 hours notice for the Brown Act. This meeting was set at the direction of the board at the last meeting. It's a special meeting. It's not on the calendar of meetings that the board established earlier this year, and it requires a 24-hour notice under the Brown Act.
Thank you, ma'am. The second thing I'd like to clarify is the urgency ordinance versus a regular ordinance. What is the difference, and what vote count needs to be had in order to achieve these two ordinances, please?
Yes. An urgency ordinance can be adopted at the same meeting that it's introduced, and it takes effect immediately. It does require a 4/5 vote of the board. A regular ordinance must be introduced, and this is for normal ordinances and all. There's one subset of ordinances, but normal ordinances require introduction at one meeting, then a second date not less than 5 days later, at which it can be adopted, but it can't be adopted until a regular meeting. So it requires 2 meetings, one of which has to be a regular meeting, and then it's effective 30 days thereafter. And the only, of course, land use ordinances after a public hearing are different, but that's the regular ordinances require 2 meetings, and it is effective 30 days after the fact.
And finally, the last question I have here is, at this point in time, we're looking at an urgency
Yes.
ordinance, which requires 4/5 vote. If we are not to achieve the 4/5 votes and only 3/5 votes are available, what is the protocol?
The board will make minor modifications to the ordinance, changing the effective date to 30 days thereafter, and maybe a couple of words in the ordinance, and then the board can waive reading of the ordinance and accept introduction and continue to the February 9th meeting for adoption as a regular ordinance.
Thank you, ma'am. Now, first of all, I'd like to thank Supervisor Tiffany and Supervisor Kosminski for joining the ad hoc committee and bringing some of this information to our meeting today. So what I'd like to do now is open up the regular agenda, and I'll start off with County Council, and then we will allow our ad hoc committee to provide the what they spoke of at their committee.
Yes, I'd like to have Reed Gologly from our office, our Deputy County Counsel, give an overview. It's going to be a presentation both of general code enforcement and some specifics relating to COVID. If you could start with that, and then the ordinance has been developed in conjunction with the ad hoc, and the PowerPoint will address the key aspects of the ordinance.
Just when you speak into the microphone, please make sure you're clear. It's a little bit muffled other places. Just want to make sure everyone understands what we're saying. Please. Thank you.
Good evening, Chair Medina, Supervisors, County Administrative Officer Espinoza, and County Counsel Ms. Thompson. Can you hear me okay? My name is Reed Galogli. I'll giving a brief overview tonight on what code enforcement is, how it typically would work in a common scenario, how that might apply to the urgency ordinance that's proposed this evening where it be adopted, and answer any questions you might have related to those topics. The first thing we should talk about is the overall goal or philosophy that drives code enforcement at a county level. Now, traditionally, the primary objectives are to protect the health and safety and welfare of the community, to maintain and preserve community standards, and preserve and provide for the orderly growth and economic development. This might be more typically applied to land use or building, which might make a little more sense. Code enforcement is oftentimes employed and more often utilized with respect to those types of violations, but it applies all over the San Benito County Code. The goal is to obtain compliance. The goal is not to impose punitive measures. However, those are often necessary in order to compel compliance, depending on which violations we have and which violators are encountered. There are three general phases to a code enforcement action, regardless of whether it's something related to an illegal deck or somebody having an illegal use or activity on their property. The first is education and outreach. County code enforcement officers from whatever relevant department or division, if they were informed of a violation, would go out and verify that indeed a violation actually occurred. They would not presume, based on a single report, that some activity was de facto occurring and in violation of the code. They would go out and verify that, and they would educate and outreach to the individuals who they deemed to be quote-unquote responsible parties. That can range from the owner of the property to somebody who's a tenant or an operator of a business establishment that is located on the property. Educating that individual as to what the violations are, what the reasons for the codes are, what the intent is of those codes to protect, and how they can change what they're doing in order to comply with the codes. The most important step is to, of course, educate, outreach, and provide that person an opportunity to cure the violation. So they don't walk out, if you will, and write a ticket immediately on witnessing a violation. They educate that owner, they give them a chance to cure the violation, they come back to investigate. So after giving guidance and giving somebody an expectation, they might revisit the property in the future if they witness that the violation is continuing or that progress towards abating it hasn't been made. They may again educate and contact that individual. They will eventually move to that second step, but that's only where education and outreach have failed and the individual is not complying in good faith. It's not based on a misunderstanding or a lack of understanding. It's based on willful violations as determined on a case-by-case basis. The administrative action step, and then finally, the very last possible resort is judicial intervention. Education and outreach I described a bit in depth earlier, so I'll go through this slide a little faster. But the make contact, determine whether a violation is actually occurring, and then educate a forum and advise the person how to correct it. Provide them notice formally of what they need to do and the opportunity to cure the violation. If that does not work after multiple attempts, they will move to an administrative action. Administrative action is different because it is only a local matter. It is heard locally and it's a local issue, and the penalty for violations is limited to a financial one. Now, if you look at here, we have four bullet points. The top two, notices of violation, notice to abate a public nuisance. These are the types of quote-unquote notices that would be issued to somebody who had illegal construction on their property or was otherwise maintaining a public nuisance that needed to be cleared. They're typically used for what I would call real property-related violations, structural elements, things that if you need to correct them are going to require review and permitting by a regulatory authority like the planning department or the building department. Administrative citations are also in the same vein of an administrative action, but they're typically applied for non-structural related violations, behavior or activity that's capable of being immediately abated or remedied without having to go through a planning process, have reviews of plans, and get approvals. So the example that I placed here is like a sandwich board in the public right-of-way. It's an obstruction in the public right-of-way. It may not be allowed depending on where you are. The cure for that is to pick up the sandwich board instantaneously and move it. And if somebody doesn't want to do that after being educated and advised, they could be issued a citation, and that would be a more appropriate remedy or a more appropriate citation in an administrative action context than a notice of violation. Now, of course, a local ordinance, as you see here, is a predicate, and it's a prerequisite to doing any administrative action. If you don't have a local ordinance providing for it, you don't have anything other than what state law might otherwise provide. Now, the consequence is financial. The punishment includes a monetary fine, but you could also, for example, if you were building a property or growing something, you could lose the ability to get permits issued to continue your construction activities, and violations could be recorded against the property so that future people who might purchase the property would know that what was out there was against the law and they wouldn't purchase it sight unseen without any information. The final step is judicial intervention. It's the last resort, and the most common way that a judicial remedy is sought is through the use of a civil injunction, a complaint in court for a violation of, as I have written it here, fill in the blank. It could range from illegal construction to substandard housing to any violation that you could really imagine. And if warranted by the facts and circumstances, you would seek judicial intervention in the form of a temporary restraining order, either commanding somebody to take some action or commanding them to not do something. And that's a injunctive relief is what it's called, as opposed to a like actual judgment of money. It's a different type of relief. The penalties that you use to compel compliance here are typically financial. The imposition of fines. I don't know how many of you have been paying attention to the news, but there have been some reports about a place called the Tuck Box and Aloha Coffee in Monterey County, both of which have gone through a similar process. The penalties that were quote unquote imposed were held in abeyance pending a determination as to whether those businesses would continue to operate in violation. It was determined by the DA there that they were in violation, and so the DA then went back to court, and these fines have been levied against those businesses for violating not only the state orders, but also the court orders. Now, violations, as you see at the very bottom, can be punished as contempt of court. It's a very rare circumstance, but that would involve jail time and additional fines if somebody were to violate a court order. That's a pretty traditional thing. It applies to whether you're in family court, civil court, or criminal court. If you disobey a court order, there may be a consequence for that. So this is the most common process that we have, and it's the most typical one that we apply. Education, outreach, and the opportunity to cure. There's a redundancy there. It probably happens 2 or 3 times before the next step is taken to administrative action. And then, of course, on a case-by-case basis, on a facts and circumstances considerations, judicial intervention may be warranted. How this would apply to the potential ordinance that is being considered by the board tonight. Education, outreach, and opportunity to cure would involve code enforcement staff from whatever relevant jurisdiction is involved making contact, sharing information, and educating people, giving them resources so that they might conduct themselves in the way that's in conformance with the regulations. Give that person an opportunity to correct the violation by either changing the way that they're operating or correcting the behavior. You collaborate with state agencies like OSHA to make sure that employees are provided with safe working environments, and you give them formal notice. Again, this is a redundant cycle. You do it 2 or 3 times, and you continue to outreach the individual. If the person is not willfully complying and it's not based on a lack of understanding, you would move to the administrative action phase involving a citation. There's 2 types that are listed in this ordinance, a citation for individual conduct versus commercial conduct. Commercial conduct, as you can see, has a stiffer financial penalty, as that might be necessary in order to compel compliance. If a business is, say, profiting to the tune of $10,000 a day, It's unlikely that a $100 penalty would compel them to comply, because it would be in their financial interest to continue operating in violation. If you have a stiff enough penalty, you can dissuade them from continuing to violate. Final step here is judicial intervention. So on a case-by-case basis, and of course prioritizing the health and safety risks and the willful violations, you could pursue judicial intervention. It could take the form of a civil action or, of course, or something else. Current legal framework, at
Okay.
this point, I want to turn it over to Barbara Thompson, County Counsel. She's going to take it from here.
Okay, could you do my slides for me? And if not,
Certainly.
if it doesn't work, I'll come over there. Okay, so currently there was a regional stay-at-home order in place because of a lack of ICU bed capacity. We're linked into the San Joaquin Valley area. It indicates that there's consequences with having the lack of the ICU capacity, including direction to prioritize services who are the sickest and cancel and reschedule elective surgeries. Once these orders are triggered, they remain in effect for at least 3 weeks, and they're lifted when a region's projected ICU capacity meets or exceeds 15%, and it's going to be assessed on a weekly basis. Next slide. Okay, so it has consequences in a number of different areas as far as the businesses that may remain open. So in addition to the masking and physical distancing, for example, shopping centers has a reduced capacity, and I note that the restaurants that I know that everyone's already familiar with is that they're only for takeout or delivery, so there's no more outdoor dining. And I won't go over all these. These all come from the state's website. And you can get that by looking at the regional stay-at-home order. Next slide. In addition, there's many businesses that are no longer able to operate. They've been restricted. So the following was a list of businesses and sectors that had to be closed. And that includes things like hair salons and barbershops, bars, and there's a variety of services that cannot operate. Next one. Okay, so then the question, I know there's been a lot of questions in the public about face coverings. The science does show that face coverings does help the spread, prevent the spread of COVID. This is again both from the COVID-19, the California website, and I also looked at the CDC website, and then there's also a Medical News Today citation. And the effectiveness of the mask does vary about the type of mask that you wear. The more effective the mask is, of course, it is better at preventing the spread. But the California state indicates that masks can block out 50 to 70% of the droplets and particles that can spread. And so that, along with physical distancing, does prevent the spread. For example, according to Dr. Robert Redfield, he says that cloth face coverings are one of the most powerful weapons we have to slow and stop the spread of the virus. Next slide. Some people don't know necessarily how to wear a mask, so I just wanted to show that as how to wear the mask correctly, and it shows that it has to cover both your nose and your mask, and it should fit tightly. I know that that is a problem with a lot of masks. You just have to make sure that they're adjusted correctly so that they don't have gaps or sag. Next slide. Okay, so the face covering guidance from the state of California did change on November 16th, 2020. So now you need to wear a face covering except in one of the circumstances below. So previously, for example, in an indoor office space, as long as you were more than 6 feet apart, you didn't have to wear the face covering. Now it indicates when you're in an indoor building, in an office, you do need to wear one, except they do exempt when you're working in an office or a room alone, and there's a variety of other provisions there where you're exempted from wearing this face covering. So those are situational exemptions that pertains to the place that you're
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Yeah, Barbara, if you may,
Sure.
can you please maybe get closer to the mic because it sounds a little bit muffled.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. This is all from the state website. These are these are situational exemptions based upon the situation that you're in or the type of location you're at. The next slide shows exemptions based upon the individual. So this pertains to the individual. So certain individuals, very young children, and individuals with medical conditions that prevent the wearing of a mask are exempt from the face covering guidance from the state of California. Next slide. There's been a lot of questions, though, about how that applies when individuals that may be exempt from the face covering ordinance are in public. Businesses do not need to allow somebody that is not wearing a face covering into their business, but they should normally engage in an interactive process to determine how those services may be provided. So, and that includes county government as well. So, for example, sometimes it may be offering curbside service or special hours or allowing somebody to wear an alternative type of mask, such as a face shield. So there's a variety of accommodations that can be granted, and it has to be looked at on a case-by-case basis. And there's a good article from Disability Rights California on that point. There's been some questions raised. I wanted to reiterate that code enforcement hearings will be open to the public, and it's going to be through Zoom in case there are any administrative hearings that are scheduled. They're not going to be private. They're open to anybody that would like to attend to see the public's business being conducted. And code enforcement officers, if they're not uniformed, they're going to have a valid county or city issued identification. So as the board would review, I think that's the last slide, but you can go on one more. Oh, the last slide. There were slight changes since the posting of the agenda yesterday in the increase in cases, increase in active cases. So I wanted to give the current statistics as they were on the internet earlier today. So as the board is aware, the proposal that from the ad hoc, and I'll let the ad hoc speak, they're proposing the ordinance with the fines that were set forth in the draft ordinance. It's going to be an ordinance which would allow the enforcement of all the California orders, the state public health orders, and also any local public health orders that are issued. And it would be effective countywide with the emphasis and the expectation that the city would actually enforce within city limits. And there is a resolution that's attached in the board agenda, which the board may feel free to modify or change if it so desires, but it sets forth the priorities and goals for enforcement as kind of a guiding document. So with that, I'll submit it to the board for any questions or comments from the board.
Excuse me, could we put up the slide that shows the actual fines?
Yes.
Because
Read.
I think we should walk through that.
Well, let's start off, of course, with the ad hoc committee.
Excuse me?
Start off with the ad hoc committee, of course, Mr. Supervisor Tiffany and Supervisor Kosmicki.
Colin, do you want to go?
Sure, Mr. Chair.
Sure.
I just want to clarify, though, we'll have some time. I have some prepared statements after the public speaks to.
Of course.
Of course. So for me, and I can only speak for myself, you know, I think the important thing here was to have a comprehensive approach to this enforcement and to give our staff as many tools as they can to, you know, make sure that the public is staying safe. That's really our biggest, and we talked about this, it's really the priority here is high-risk violators. That was something that we really want to be the focus here when we're talking about enforcement, and to make sure that we emphasize that we're including large stores, household gatherings, two of the main areas that have been, I guess you could say, criticized from the other side on this issue, and that's something I certainly agree with them on, and so that was important for us to make sure that was emphasized. We have the individual and the commercial fines. Seeking voluntary compliance is an emphasis here as well. So we're not we're not trying to harass people. We just want to make sure they're educated and informed about these rules. And as I said, you know, it's not meant to punish. The goal here is to get us through this period we're in here now because of what we've seen, especially with our numbers spiking since November. You know, as we all know, I believe our infections have actually more than tripled now. Our hospital is full, so there are implications there, not only for people with COVID, but for people that have other ailments as well. And then of course our deaths have gone up significantly. We had another death, I believe, getting us to 42 now. And I think we've all talked about in the past, and Supervisor Tiffany mentioned how at the beginning of this pandemic, you barely knew anybody who had it. And now we're at a point where we all know people, at least I know probably a handful of people now who have passed away from this terrible disease here in San Benito County. And even as a healthy 41-year-old, I'm at a point where when I go out, I didn't have that fear when this thing started, and I do fear for my health, and I fear for my family's health, and we're all vulnerable now. This isn't just about people who are, you know, of a certain age or have certain ailments. I think everybody's vulnerable, and so the goal here is to get us through a period, get our numbers down, and make sure that we're doing our part to keep our community as safe as possible. And I know Supervisor Tiffany, I'll just add, in the ad hoc committee meeting, brought up a great point again about having and we could talk further about this, but making sure we have a compliance officer that's going out, and maybe Supervisor Tiffany wants to pick up on that, but somebody who's going out not to enforce necessarily, but to really truly be out regularly educating the public. But that's pretty much, you know, for me, kind of the big bullet points of this, and so I'll hand it off to Supervisor Tiffany now. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Kuzmicki. Just picking up on those comments, first of all, again, it's our intent and hope that most all of the issues that we have out there can be handled through education, through outreach. And certainly we're going to take that approach, as Reed already explained, and give everyone every opportunity, both individuals and businesses, to comply. But unfortunately, I think as many of us know, in spite of many months of talking about the need to comply, there are still many, certainly not the majority, but there are still a significant number of people that continue to defy the guidelines, safety guidelines, and not wear masks in public. And there are some, fortunately not a great number, but there are some businesses that continue to defy the regulations in spite of like the terrible statistics that we're dealing with right now. In the resolution, it talks about the state that our county is right now, and the last slide that Barbara put up shows it. We are, once again, this was mentioned Tuesday night, I mentioned it, out of 58 counties in the state of California, we are number 5. We're the 5th worst county in the entire state of California in terms of infection rates on a per capita basis. So we are in really terrible shape. I was looking at this just in the last week, last 7 days, we have lost 6 people in our county to this terrible disease, nearly 1 a day. So we're in serious condition, and we have to take this extremely seriously. We, as Supervisor Kuzmicki said, we certainly don't want to punish anyone. We hope that people will voluntarily comply, but we feel, the ad hoc committee feels, that we simply need to give the county and our cities more tools to ensure that there is proper compliance. A couple other things I'll mention that Supervisor Kosmicki mentioned as well. Going into this, we felt that it was important this is a countywide enforcement ordinance, as opposed to simply focusing on the unincorporated areas of San Benito County. So this would apply countywide, and we're looking to and expecting that both the cities of San Juan Bautista and Hollister will assist where necessary to ensure compliance and bring enforcement where necessary. Also was mentioned by Supervisor Kosmicki, I think it's absolutely critical that part of this will be and include, and we are directing staff to ensure that there's enough staffing to have someone out there virtually every day talking to businesses, talking to individuals as necessary, and making sure that there's consistency in people complying. I think we've all in our community we go out shopping, go to grocery stores, and I think we've all experienced where some days there may be someone at the door ensuring that the proper capacities are maintained, or that people that enter are wearing face masks, but other days there is no one. So we need to ensure that on a daily basis there is compliance. And we will be focusing on some of the large box, the big box stores, which certainly are really critical. And ultimately, the hope is, and the plan, that we are going to be really looking at the areas where the greatest risk of infection take place and where the most egregious violations are taking place. And that's really going to be the focus of this. So both Supervisor Kosmicki and I looked at this and with the help of the county council and Barbara's staff, as well as other county staff people, we've put together what I feel is a very strong ordinance, but also very fair ordinance, and gives the flexibility to the county and the cities of San Juan, Bautista, and Hollister the ability to enforce compliance where necessary. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Go ahead, Supervisor Hernandez.
Yeah, thank you for that, Supervisor Tiffany. I'd like to ask some questions to the ad hoc. I appreciate the sentiments. You don't want it to be very heavy-handed. You want it to be about education and engagement. That sounds really, really nice. So with that said, I'd like to kind of understand what that means on the practical level, because I know this is, when it comes to a process that you create, it's one thing to write it down. It's another thing to actually the pragmatic element of it actually being played out. So before we discuss enforcement, maybe we should spend some time talking about the rules, about the guidance. How is the guidance going to be applied? What is going to be the real world scenario as far as what are the possibilities? So I'd like to start with one question. You guys, as the ad hoc, did you guys get a chance to talk to any businesses about what would look like it was fair? And granted, I know there's obviously those folks that are probably opposed, businesses that wouldn't want to talk to you maybe. But I'm pretty sure there's businesses that don't mind complying. So have you guys reached out to any of them to get input on the application of this and, the practical application of it?
Well, let me just say, between Tuesday night and when this had to be posted, we did not talk directly to the businesses, but I can, speaking for myself, I certainly have spoken prior to Tuesday, spoken to a number of businesses, as well as we have been all getting, I know, significant amount of input from the business community over the last, number of weeks and getting input. So that's what I would say.
Mr. Chair?
Okay.
So yes, I have spoken to businesses, and I've supported the concept of enforcement of the stay-at-home rules for a while now, because the mask ordinance is, having a mask ordinance at this point is pretty much is a gesture. I think most people are wearing masks, but it goes well beyond masks. So for me, I've talked to businesses about this concept before this week even, and for instance, I went to several of the big box stores, reached out to their managers. I took a tour with the Target manager, for instance, of their facilities, and he showed me around to kind of show me what they're doing, and I let him know that the county would be considering some level of an enforcement ordinance. So yes, I have spoken to businesses. I've talked big and small, and as Supervisor Tiffany mentioned, businesses have been reaching out. And then secondly, on the guidance part, you mentioned what would it look like? It would essentially, if you violate the shelter-in-place rules that are in place, and correct me if I'm not interpreting your question correctly, but if someone or a business violates the shelter or the stay-at-home order, those rules, then they would be held accountable, or they would be educated, and if they don't comply, then they would be held accountable to that.
And let me also add that, in my mind, there's some violations that are more significant than others, certainly. And those businesses that have an opportunity, without naming names, but with those businesses that have an opportunity to operate safely and yet choose not to, for example, have the opportunity to operate outside and choose not to, and to do it unsafely inside, I think that you look at those businesses much more severely, in my mind, than maybe another business that is trying to do the right thing and trying to operate as safely as possible, albeit maybe have some smaller violations. So I think you do have to look at the level, and as I said earlier, how egregious the violation, as well as where the greatest risk is. We know that the transmittal of the disease happens frequently inside, and also when there's larger groups together, particularly when obviously not wearing masks. So I think that plays into how you look at whether people are complying or not, and to the level that they may be complying.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Supervisor Tiffany. I mean, it's to understand what is the rules is part of the question, right? Because there's constant dialogue about this. I know there's, Chicago mayor, there's the governor of New York, both said outdoor dining needs to happen now. They need to open up now. So there seems to be this trend heading in that direction, which I think is going to create questions, right? So hopefully that education becomes really successful. But you mentioned like outdoor dining, that's part of the issue is it's made this thing hard to stomach. There is no scientific evidence that shows outdoor dining is dangerous. Not to say there's no risk. There is risk with everything, but it's a lot lower risk than anything else. So maybe on that note, since you guys talked to some of those businesses, did you get to maybe ask them how many of them have had COVID in their business? Even if they were to maybe not get specific, obviously they can't release personal information, but I think a risk-benefit analysis, since that seems to be a high demand from other communities, is how are we assessing that we're actually shutting down businesses? If they're the problem, then obviously then that's justifiable. But if they're not, then so I want to know. I mean, did you guys find out if any of these businesses said, yeah, I've had issues with COVID, or no, I haven't had any issues with COVID? And maybe on that note, did you guys talk to any restaurants, salons, any gyms, since those are the ones that seems to be the most impacted?
Mr. Chair?
Wait, hold on one second. Hey, Barbara, just for a point of clarity, when we talk about we're closing down businesses, are we closing down the businesses, or are we following the executive order from the governor? And at this point in time, as I understand, you can correct me if I'm wrong, it is still a lawful order. It has not been overturned by the state Supreme Court or the federal Supreme Court. Am I safe to say that?
Right. This would be only enforcing we only have the orders at the state level right now, the guidance and the orders. We don't have any local restrictions, so, no special county local public health orders yet that have been issued. So this is all at the state level. So none of these businesses that would be cited or educated should be operating right now. If they're in violation of the estate orders, they're already prohibited from operating.
Is
So
it
this
also safe to state
Yeah.
that if the state Supreme Court or the federal Supreme Court overturned it and said
Yes.
that was unlawful, we, as a board, most likely, I can't say yes or no, would agree with that opinion by the Supreme Court?
Yes, we wouldn't have an option because to the extent that we're enforcing the state order, if, let's say one state order becomes overruled or even modified by the governor as a result, or the state health officer as a result of a court case, then that would modify what we're enforcing. So our enforcement would automatically change as the law develops in this. And I know that the state is constantly evolving to meet the best practices as it knows how to set forth the prohibitions. So if there's going to be a ruling that comes down, the state would abide by that ruling unless they're actively appealing and having a judge stay that. So they, of course, will comply with the law as it's issued by the courts.
Thank you.
And-
Supervisor.
Yeah, let me just comment. And Supervisor Hernandez, I certainly appreciate your questions, and I understand you're a small business owner. I, for many, many years, was a small business owner, and I think we both greatly appreciate how difficult this situation is and how this disease is impacting not just individuals but businesses. But let me just say that we are following with all of these guidelines. These are, not coming out of thin air. These are driven by science, and these are directives that are coming down from the state. But again, they are driven by science. And although I certainly understand the way that certain businesses might feel, I think a lot has to do with whether you are able to wear a face mask or not and still, have the business and those kind of issues. The other thing I might say is, although I think both Supervisor Kosmicki and myself, when we were drafting this, we certainly took into consideration how this impacts businesses, and that was very critical when it was drafted in terms of the emphasis of education and outreach and giving businesses any number of opportunities to cure any violation, as well as to emphasize, as earlier stated, the focus on the most egregious violations and where the greatest risk of spread took place. But with that being said, I think it's also fair to say that our first priority with this enforcement ordinance is to do everything possible to reduce the spread of this disease. Once again, our county is in terrible shape. We are one of the worst areas in the entire state of California, one of the worst areas in our entire country in terms of illness spread and death. And so we have to do everything possible to protect our citizens. That's got to be the priority. And I think that drove the decisions that both Supervisor Kosmicki and myself looked at when we put together this ordinance.
Supervisor Kosmicki.
Thank you. Yeah, and I'll just say briefly, just to answer your question, yes, I did have those conversations. I think that's a fair question to ask as far as COVID numbers without going into detail, obviously. And I would just echo what Supervisor Tiffany said. I think our purpose here is to get our numbers down so that we can get out of this tier so that we can reopen these businesses. Thank you.
I appreciate that, Supervisors. Yeah. So my sentiment wasn't to disagree on protecting public health. I know I've heard you say that, Supervisor Tiffany, over a couple different times. It really is more about the interpretation. That's all. It's one thing for the rules to be distributed, and it's another thing for someone to digest them and know how they apply to their individual businesses. That's why, for me, it's about the practical outcome. And that's why I ask these questions, because sometimes, it depends on the extent, I guess, in that sense, the education. How much education is going to happen, I'm not sure. So, we could check off a box and say we're going to put out material. It's just, there should be a pretty clear expectation for the public, for them to know how they're going to be updated on the latest information, not just Nixle reports. And Nixle, I think, is excellent, but not everybody does Nixle, and not everybody does social media. So there's a lot of different layers to it. And I just know with even the business owners that I've had a relationship with, they do very little paying attention to any of that because they're focused on their business. So it's just, one thing is the high level approach of the rules, and the other one is the application of those rules. So on that note, I had kind of a couple other questions with the administrative process. So I know that the administrative process basically says you get, once you do get a fine, or once you do want to appeal a fine, or then you have to basically put up another $750 just to address it. And so there's right there's an assumption of guilt, I guess. And once you go through the process, if for some reason the administrative officer, the hearing officer, I guess, disagrees with you, then not only do you have to pay that $750, but you also have to pay for his time, which is, and then on, whatever the fine is on top of that. So it could easily become a very expensive process, which I think that's why it should be a lot more transparent. I'm not sure if there's a goal to make these hearings public. I know that in the typical scenario, when you get even a fix-it ticket, you get pulled over, you have a chance to go to court to have a public hearing, so that way the public gets to hear the dialogue and ultimately knows that the judge is being fair. It just makes it for a very transparent process. I don't see that with this process. And then also, I know that there's language in there that actually basically clarifies that there's definitely a very strong protection for the accuser. So if someone says, hey, my neighbor, he's having a huge party, then when they go over, they knock on the door. Obviously, if there's a party, then there's an issue. But if that's a lie, if there's some kind of misrepresentation, maybe that person has a really big family, but the neighbor has an issue with that neighbor, right? How many neighbors have issues with each other? So the bottom line is, it might end up being more just the desire is to spite your neighbor, to go after them. And what is the recourse for the person that's being accused? What is the ability for the just, not only the just compensation for the person that's accused and is wrongfully accused, but what is the process for that person to defend themselves, to be able to know their accuser, to be able to know that way they can put the dots together and say, yeah, I know why exactly. I can explain to you exactly why this person called on me.
Okay,
So
Supervisor Hernandez, Barbara, can you answer some of these questions?
Yes, I can. Should I turn it over to Reed? Because do you want?
Either or, it doesn't matter. Just the one about the public hearing,
Yes.
we need some clarification on that.
Yeah.
That's the first one that
I'll have Reed
comes to
talk
mind.
about I know that we should raise the issue about the deposit, and it will be a public hearing that's available to the public. Also, read that there's not going to be matters that are brought forth unless there's sufficient evidence to show the culpability of that individual. The county does not want to engage in an administrative hearing where if the person's found guilty, the county's going to have cover the cost of the administrative hearing officer. There's going to be good cause to bring administrative hearings after extensive education. We educate, we outreach to people before we issue administrative citations. So there's A, the person knows, and B, there's a record that we've tried to educate. Reed, would you like to expand?
Thank you.
Yeah, just to briefly respond, I think, I don't know what number slide this is, but it's in the packet. Or actually, this may not be in the packet, but it is here in this updated PowerPoint. And I think County Counsel Barbara Thompson spoke to this. The code enforcement hearings are open to the public. So if somebody were to request a hearing on an administrative citation, and that hearing were to be conducted, it would be open to the public the same way that they can listen in on Zoom or any other type of WebEx type of virtual setting. With respect to the issue of administrative action being taken, it's not the first step. So if somebody is going to end up with an administrative citation, they are going to have been counseled. There's going to have been a education and outreach process that preceded that, and the individuals from code enforcement staff who engage in that outreach behavior, they keep a record of that. They indicate, they take notes, they make sure that they indicate they've investigated to determine independently whether there is a legitimate violation, and then they also document the outreach efforts and the sharing of the relevant guidance so that an individual who ends up with a citation is not going to be the case situation where they have not had education, outreach, and an opportunity to comply. I don't know if I got all the questions there.
Yeah, I think that answered most of the questions that Supervisor Hernandez had, and
Yeah, you did, Reed, thank you, except for the last one about knowing who accused you. I know that there's a protection for the person. There's, you know, if the person being accused doesn't know, then it's hard to, you know, you might end up being very easy to respond to why someone would accuse you if there was some kind of a history. So all I'm saying is the Constitution does guarantee to be able to know your accuser so that you can defend yourself, right? To be able to address it maybe in a public setting.
That is correct. Under like a constitutional trial or a criminal trial, you would have a right to confront your accusers, and that's generally a due process consideration. But what I would reiterate is that if there's a complaint made, it's not considered presumptive proof of a violation. The code enforcement officer has to go out and independently witness it, or there has to be evidence. So if a video of an event occurring with individuals in violation who had been previously counseled was provided, then ultimately that evidence would be used. So you usually have an administrative hearing testimony offered by the hearing officer, or sorry, not the hearing officer, the code enforcement officer. Code enforcement officer says, I went out, I met with this individual on this day. I counseled, advised, and they did not comply. The question that you might be asking Supervisor Hernandez is, well, what about the person who notified code enforcement staff? And what we try and do is disassociate motives, because we understand that good fences make good neighbors, and sometimes bad fences mean there's bad neighbors and there might be bad relationships. But the code enforcement officer has an independent duty to investigate and determine the violation free from influence of bias, so that we have that like difference between my neighbor has a grudge against me. That may be the case as well. But if you're operating your business in violation of the law, the grudge is irrelevant to the violation of law, and the violation of law needs to be corrected for the public safety. So, if that's...
yeah, thank you, Reed.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
I just want to say thank you to the ad hoc committee. Had Supervisor Hernandez did his homework, he would have found out and read distinctively that the background is laid out. I appreciate the work that the ad hoc committee did. I feel that this ordinance is comprehensive. It addresses all the concerns that Supervisor Hernandez had, and had he read all of the pages within the 16-page document, he would have had the answers answered already, or he could have picked up the phone and called someone here in admin for clarification. But everything is spelled out, Supervisor Hernandez, and I just ask that you please be considerate of our time too. We have a lot of people that want to speak on this, and I understand where you're coming from. I understand your passion, I understand your concern, but there are other people who want to talk about this too, and I would like to open it up to the public as soon as we can. Thank you.
I still had another question, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, which, and Supervisor Gonzalez, I did read the 16. But yeah, the answer was basically, no, we're not, there is no due process for a defense against your accuser. So that's basically the answer, because of the administrative process. It's a side, you know, basically a side way of addressing it, but it still doesn't necessarily address guarantee the constitutional right that the individuals have.
It is a public
to know
hearing,
their accuser.
correct?
Either way, the question is, so how are we ensuring accommodations are going to be given to those with medical exemptions? Because there is medical exemptions, and I know that I've talked to Barbara about this, so yes, I've done a lot of homework on this. And when I talked to Barbara, she mentioned that doesn't guarantee that the individual has to be able to come into the business, but that business shouldn't be able to discriminate. Therefore, it has to guarantee some kind of an accommodation. And my only request is, what is the accommodation? Shouldn't the Board of Supervisors understand what those accommodations are to make sure that they're addressing, so that way these issues are being addressed equitably, right? They're guaranteeing that these things are fair and just.
Barbara, can you answer that, please?
Yes, each business could have its own type of accommodation. There could be a number of different types of accommodations. You could have special hours for individuals that are not able to wear a mask. For example, the store could stay open, so those individuals are virtually by themselves in the store. You could deliver curbside. You could allow them to wear alternate types of masks. You could conduct your business virtually. You could offer delivery and pickup. There's so many different types of accommodations. It's would be up to that business to look at what type of accommodations that they can offer that is a reasonable accommodation considering the type of business that they have. Just like, you know, we offer accommodations in governmental services, and it depends on what the need is from that individual and how we're able to provide that service to that individual in a reasonable manner. Is that sufficient?
Yes, I appreciate the response, Barbara, but yeah, that didn't really answer the question. I know what they can do, but they could also not do any of those things. It's on paper saying that they should accommodate, but does that mean they're actually going to accommodate? That's the question. And that's why I think it's expedient for the Board of Supervisors to know what those accommodations are, so that these rules are being applied equitably, which is the question. Is there a process to ensure that these things are being handled equitably? So, and if the board desires to answer it or not, that's their choice, but that is my final question, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you, Supervisor Hernandez, appreciate it. Any other questions for the board? Reed, any county council? Ray? Nope. Okay, then at this point in time, we will open it up to public comment.
Members of the public who wish to speak on this item, please press star 9 or the raise your hand icon. Courtney, please state your full name for the record. You will have 3 minutes.
Good evening. My name is Courtney Evans. I would like to thank the board, and it looks like, again, I mean, we've heard the board for months and months and months, and county staff and county council talk for hours upon hours upon hours. Thank you, Ms. B. Gonzalez, for your respect of my comments right now. And I would also like to invite the board to a true town hall meeting where the board listens to the people for hours and hours and hours. The first slide, and the gentleman that was speaking said that there's nothing that's been done so far. That's false. There's been issues of citations to businesses and threats and harassments to businesses before this has even gone into place. I witnessed it tonight. Code enforcement called the sheriff's department on a business 2 nights before this meeting even took place. I was arrested in the people's house before this even took place. I'm going to read to you the definition of fraud: deceit and trickery. Intentionally changing the truth in order to induce another part with something of value or to surrender a legal right. The state has set guidance and recommendations. The state sets laws. Ordinance at the county level cannot supersede state laws, nor the Constitution. We the people ask, and I have asked that a representative of our group, Open Beat SBC, be part of the ad hoc committee. Who's on the new ad hoc committee? We are tired of having only stakeholders and state agencies a part of these committees telling the people what they should and should not do. I would like to remind the people that the people in the community of San Benito County do not yield their sovereignty to the agencies which serve them. The people delegating you the authority do not give our public servants the right to decide what is good for the people to know and what is not good for them to know. The people insist on remaining informed so that they may retain control over the instruments that we have created. I would like to have proof of every fact of the whereas that you have posted in these papers. Every whereas you state facts, we the people deserve proof, and the burden of proof falls upon you. We the people have asked for it. If somebody can be arrested and all of their information can be shared, then a COVID positive person should be shared information, what the law provides. We've asked for that information and it is not given to the people. Please prove to us. We have emails from coroners asking that they need to have a COVID test for somebody to sign their death certificate. COVID is real.
Thank you. Thank you.
Venice, please state your full name for the record. You will have 3 minutes. Venice, you've been unmuted. Please unmute yourself.
Hello?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, I'm back, Courtney. If I could, I'd like to give her my minutes. But the bottom line is, how can we, as a community, if we cannot stick up for our own police, and like Peter said, if we have problems breathing with a mask, that hasn't even been addressed. Nothing else has been addressed. Anything on your format has everything to do with fines. So you're fining, you're going to, you know what, guys, this is just ridiculous. We're dealing with something that's 99%. We're all trying to survive. Our local businesses in this town are hurting. Do we really need to stick out our chest because we're county supervisors and we're in charge? Let's all get along and work on this together. My heart goes out to Peter because he really represents the people. He really represents us as a community, as a God-fearing man. We need to take up a stand in this community and show what we stand for. You know, it's just very proud to live in this community for 30 years. But I'm not proud with certain members on the supervisor board and the other people in the city. But how can we come together and realize different people have different opinions? If you're not happy with certain things, stay home. If you're, I mean, come on, people. There's different opinions going on. I hope you understand what I'm trying to say. Once again, been on hold for 2 hours listening to all your stuff going back and forth. But thank you, Peter, for being an outstanding person for this community. Thank you for my time.
Thank you.
In your time.
Corey, please state your full name for the record. You will have 3 minutes. Corey, please unmute yourself. You've been unmuted.
Unmute. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
My name is Corey Hitchcock. I've lived in San Benito County for quite a long time. I appreciate your time and I appreciate you running for office. I know it's a big job, but I do want to say I am a person that I thought we lived in a America, which is free. We have been going through this for 9 months. 9 months. The lockdowns obviously do not work. I am a person who has had a loss from COVID. I think it is real. I have myself been sick. It's real. But you guys cannot keep us locked down. I know that there's businessmen up on this podium. I know that, you have to think of the little people. You have to think about our children. You have to think every other state, they're open and their numbers are down. Why is San Benito County and the state of California, we have had the toughest lockdowns and we have the highest rate? You cannot tell me it is from people going over and having a barbecue or, someone going into a small business, because I guarantee you, I go to Target, there's thousands of people there. I go anywhere else of the big business, box business, and there's tons of people there. We have to come and think about the little man. That's who started the United States, is a little man, and we have to, it's 9 months. When is it going to end? We are Americans. We know how to take care of our health. And I really think that we need to take a different approach, because the approach that we are taking now is not right. It's obviously not right. So I appreciate you listening to me, but I really think all 4 of you really, really need to take a look, because you are damaging people that will never come back. And we have been locked down for 9 months. There's a problem there. So maybe we can, I don't know if people aren't getting back, I don't know what's going on, but I think that as San Benito County, we need to put our hats together and we need to figure it out and get back to a little bit of normalcy. Thank you very much.
Peter, please state your full name for the record. You will have 3 minutes.
Peter Lago. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I have 5 questions for you, just as a question of procedural review. Question number 1, what is the primary cause of the spike in the COVID cases? That's a question.
We're not able to comment on any public comment right now, sir.
It's not a comment, it's a question.
We're not able to answer anything. Can you please proceed?
Okay. So I guess I'll just run through my list of questions, which is 1, what is the primary cause of the spike in COVID cases? 2, how has the closing of businesses positively affected the COVID-19 numbers? Are those numbers going up or down since businesses have closed? Question 3, can we identify the causation for the current jump in COVID-19 numbers? Question 4, did positive cases jump in the same way when businesses were open earlier last year when home gatherings were not happening? Question 5, how is the continued closure of businesses affecting COVID-19 cases? Now, what I continue to hear is this addressing towards how businesses operate, how businesses should have different restrictions in order to operate safely. Those are all random good considerations. They are good considerations. The question really is, are we not really addressing the real problem? If the real problem does happen to be these home gatherings, why are we not addressing those things and addressing them more aggressively? As a local business owner, I do find that a lot of these things seem to be sort of that policy that makes it look like we're doing something, but yet they've clearly been ineffective as businesses have been closed. COVID numbers have continued to rise. And I'd just like you to consider these questions in your own minds as you guys try to find the guidelines yourselves as to what you deem appropriate and try to find the most effective way of dealing with this, as obviously we're all concerned with this. Obviously, we'd all like to get on with our lives. But I'd like us also to ask ourselves the right questions so that we can move forward with the most effective means. That's it. Thank you.
Dale, please state your full name for the record. You will have 3 minutes.
Good evening. My name is Dale Iman, and I've been a San Benito County resident for over 19 years. First, I understand the need to meet in person, but I was under the impression you'd be holding your meeting remotely where you could be unmasked and we could hear you clearly. I had a really hard time hearing most of the speakers who wore masks while they were speaking, so please make an effort to find ways to improve this in the future. I will simply say that I am vehemently opposed to the level at which we as a county are reacting to risk avoidance by trying to legislate away our fears. As a citizen of this county, I'm telling it like I see it that you need to stop allowing fear to be the primary driver of your decisions. Stop letting fear drive your life and, more importantly, the lives of those whom you govern. There will always be dangers and risks in life, and it's impossible to avoid or prevent every negative outcome. And if we were to focus solely on avoiding the risks, we would never achieve anything of value. By hiding from risk, we are also avoiding responsibility, and we preclude any possibility of achieving goodness or greatness in our lives. And now you're trying to legislate away your fear in an attempt to make every one of us perfectly safe. I agree with putting public health protections in place and encouraging people to wear masks is a good thing in most situations, but there's more to this than considering only the health aspects. You say it's about being voluntary, not meant to punish, but yet you're proposing fines and court actions. I'm sorry if I don't believe you when you're basing your arguments in fear. You say most people are wearing masks already, but it goes beyond that. So what does that mean? You spoke with target managers, but what did they think about your proposal? You say these restrictions are based on the science, but we've consistently heard only the science that supports these proposals and no discussion about alternative approaches or alternative science, except for a few people here speaking today. That needs to change because it's your responsibility to weigh all the factors, including economic, educational, religious, and constitutional, and the effects beyond the potential possibility that we reduce infection rates. I predict that even if you vote to approve this, and even if fines to a large number of people result, you still won't greatly affect the spread of COVID-19, and we'll be no better off and perhaps worse overall as a community and from the other non-medical perspectives. Further, I view that allowing these enforcement actions, while seemingly benign, is granting this county the ability to further restrict the civil liberties guaranteed by the Constitution of the United States, the freedoms to assemble peacefully, and not to have any law that interferes with any religious practice. I have seen COVID-19 used as the reason to attack these guarantees, which each of you have sworn to uphold and defend, along with me. And I have not seen evidence that mask wearing provides a sufficient benefit that would outweigh a restriction of rights and civil liberties. As our county's leaders, we the people have entrusted you with the responsibility not only to protect us, but also to lead us well by making wise decisions. You owe to those affected, which is the entire population of San Benito County, to weigh all the risks and effects, not just those which support what looks to be a predetermined course of action to avoid some risks while ignoring so many other factors.
Thank you, sir.
Seth, please state your full name for the record. You will have 3 minutes.
Hi, my name is Seth Capron. I'm a 50-year resident of Aromas, and I encourage the board to pass this ordinance that's before you. If I am infected with COVID, I'd like to think that if I need to be hospitalized, there'll be a bed for me when I get there, which is dubious at this point because of the rate of infection. It's unfortunate that some people refuse to follow the state guidelines that I believe are based on science. And we all sacrifice something from following those guidelines. And we do that for the common good. And if there are people who are just unwilling to comply with that at some point, we need to do something to make sure that they do. So I think that it's unfortunate. I certainly, my heart goes out to the people who are financially severely impacted by this, but you know, we can't get to the point where our hospitals are overflowing and we're having to do triage at the door. And we're right up against that at this point in time. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Robin, please state your full name for the record. You will have 3 minutes.
Hello, my name is Robin Spencer. I was very disappointed in the fact that there was an ad hoc committee. And as far as I knew, ad hoc committees could contain people of the community. And with this board who states that you want unity of the community, you would think you would want at least one person from each district to partake in these life-shattering and crippling on both sides of the spectrum decisions that you're making. I have recently just talked to 10 salon owners within the last 20 minutes, and none of them have been spoken to by not one person on your board to see how they're doing or how they're going to be affected. So, Colin, I'm really disappointed in the fact that you find it necessary to talk to big business, but not small business. Again, the Roberts Rule of Order for an ad hoc committee says that the special committee has two functions, and it is to investigate, and that this committee is created to perform a specific task and is dissolved when the task is completed and the final report is given. The membership should not create a special committee to do something that is within the designated function of a standing committee. The purpose of this committee is determined as its size as well as who is appointed to serve on it. If a special committee is created to investigate a question, it is important that all different views of the membership be reflected in the committee members. This practice allows many differences to be resolved in the committee instead of at the assembly meeting where they take up a lot of time, such as tonight. Such a committee is thus usually a large one in order to represent all viewpoints. That is what needs to happen. And going forward, since this is not going to be ending, I hope the ad hoc committee is thus going forward and that you add members to that ad hoc committee. Also, we don't need education in my business anyways. I believe all of you should come down and get educated on our practices of being clean and sanitary. We believe in this virus and we know it's real. However, we're trying to make a living. If the masks work, then we will be safe working one-on-one with a client who's wearing a mask and following all the guidelines that we have been given by the state. More sanitation. We have more sanitation practices than any box office stores or any other. I would recommend to the board tonight, because obviously you're going to go forward with this, that you, on your ad hoc committee, put people from, even if it's one from each one of your districts, add to your committee.
Thank you.
More Tiff, please state your full name for the record. You will have 3 minutes.
Hi, good evening, Tiffany Moore. I just want to start by applauding Supervisor Gonzalez, Supervisor Tiffany, and Supervisor Kosmicki, and Supervisor Medina. Thank you. Thank you for thinking of the vulnerable. My grandmother is in assisted living. My son has seasonal asthma. I have grandparents and parents that are alive, and I'm constantly worried about them. I heard the word education used, and so nice and refreshing. I think that is so imperative. Taking a first-year biology lab course in college, you do a Petri dish experiment where people cough on the Petri dish, and you see what kind of germs and are living in the human mouth, and that was before COVID. So if you've ever taken a first-year biology lab course, you see what is in the droplets in our aerosols. So I want to thank you on behalf of the community members who are actively trying to do what's right, follow the guidelines, and not attacking our fellow community members or infecting and spreading misinformation and a sense of entitlement. Thank you for finally putting this out. This should have been done months ago. Countless lives have been needlessly lost. And I'm hoping that this educated, solution-oriented approach, rather than hypothetical scenarios that we can talk in circles about all night long, can actually help us get through this time of suffering, or at least give us the hope that we are going to make it through for health and business alike. It goes hand in hand. And we can get the numbers under control. Thank you for supporting healthcare workers and no longer talking in circles and doing nothing. We are now seeing the results of our inaction. And obviously, people are not following the rules. I drive around this county, this town daily, and you don't see it. You don't see businesses following the guidelines. So I want to thank you. This gives me hope, and I really appreciate you, and I applaud you, and know that so many people of this community are so appreciative, grateful, and support you wholeheartedly. Keep up the amazing work. Thank you so much. God bless you and your family, everybody. Really, truly. Thank you.
Thank you.
Rob, please state your full name for the record. You will have 3 minutes. Rob, you've been unmuted. Please unmute yourself.
We can come back to him if he needs to.
Christy, please state your full name for the record. You will have 3 minutes.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, my name is Christy Infantino. The board made a statement tonight that said masks are the single most effective form of prevention. I believe that exclusively emphasizing that masks save lives is misguiding our community and resulting in grave consequences. The repeated government rhetoric has failed to focus, educate, inspire the people on the single most effective and empirically driven method that we have known since day one, which is prevention through one's improved health. Where a person's best defense against hospitalization and death due to COVID-19 is good health. Let's call this what it really is, a chronic disease crisis. Chronic disease and history of smoking create a dumpster fire when paired with COVID-19. Reckless health is selfish behavior right now. Diabetes, lung disease, high blood pressure are all preventable. Choices that lead to chronic disease are just as much an individual choice as wearing a mask. I heard tonight that San Benito County is amongst the unhealthiest in the state based on these COVID numbers. We have work to do, and it goes well beyond wearing masks. I ask you, Board of Supervisors, what have you done to educate our community how to take better care of themselves? How have you done your part to prepare our community with the worst flu season ever? I believe it was Supervisor Tiffany said that they are doing everything possible. I just don't see, businesses have been asked to become creative. I implore the Board of Supervisors to be more creative than this. How can we as a community inspire and help people to make better, healthier lifestyle decisions so that they don't take up the beds in the hospitals for the other reasons that people end up trauma, stabbing, other things that come up. I think in the true interest of preventing hospitalization and saving lives from COVID, the people of San Benito need more education and guidance in the area of good old-fashioned diet and exercise. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Melanie, please state your full name for the record. You will have 3 minutes.
Hi, my name is Melanie Duclos, and I'd like to thank you all for doing this meeting tonight and allowing us to speak. But in your considerations of all your enforcement, has anyone ever considered looking into the issues that COVID restrictions has descended upon the rest of our community? Yes, staying safe, and I think is everyone's concern, but mandating fines, sheltering in place, closing businesses is not working. It definitely feels to a large majority of our community that you are not only listening, that you are only listening to the loud protesters that call for shutting down our small businesses, along with our voices and our freedoms. So I want to thank you, Peter Hernandez, for being the one who stands up for us, for our small businesses. Have any of you considered that calls to suicide hotlines have increased by 8,000% since we have had to lock down? 25% of our young adults have seriously considered suicide. Suicide and drug overdose deaths in teens are now greater than our COVID deaths. There's 20% increase in substance abuse, 41% increase in alcohol abuse. Have you guys considered any of this? Oh, but you want to give us fines for trying to support our families. Studies are showing that many of us are immune to COVID and that testings are inaccurate. Hospitals are getting $3,200 to $3,500 per positive COVID test. Of course, this is encouraging the hospitals to report inaccurate testing. Look it up, it's everywhere. Of course, our numbers are going up. Otherwise, you wouldn't have the power through fear. You're pushing fear. How long is it going to be? These viruses mutate. Is the vaccine even going to work on the new virus? And how long are you going to shut us down? It's not working. We want to keep our businesses open. We want to provide for our families. All I hear is you want to fine us for not what? Enforcing compliance? That sounds like Nazism to me. You said, Bob Tiffany, you want to take this very seriously, that you have to take this very seriously. We are taking this very seriously. This does sound like deceit and trickery, and we, the people, want facts. We want the proof of what you're claiming. I'm a proud member of this community and a proud member of Open SBC. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Nikki, please state your full name for the record. You will have 3 minutes.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes. Yes.
My name is Nikki Chapman. You know, the only reason why I called in was I wanted to say one thing, but I heard so much that I have more to say. So as a woman of color in this small town, I need more than ever to be able to smile at strangers in public and have them smile back at my children and myself. And, you know, I kept hearing the word education, which was so overused by you guys. Horrible, deadly disease was used as a tool, you know, to sound righteous and that you care about saving lives. But what have you done about health in our county in the past? 40,000 Californians, and I just, you know, Googled this as I was waiting. 40,000 Californians die every single year from tobacco. What have you done about cigarettes? And if you really cared about deaths, the caller before me had mentioned, and how many suicides since March? Can we have those numbers? I know there's been an increase on teenage and elderly, and I'm sure adults in between. How many people have relapsed on drugs, have turned to drugs? How many are alcoholics now, or relapsed on alcohol? How many beds are not available at mental health hospitals? You guys are frauds. You were called a fraud, and you are. This seems so unreal. If somebody is so afraid of getting the virus with a 99.8% survival rate and cannot hunker down at home, why not wear 2 masks? One for you know, those who aren't willing to wear them anymore because this is so insane, and then one for themselves, 2 masks. You know, come on, this is a joke. I feel there's, what else is behind this for you guys to behaving this way? And thank you, I believe his name is Peter Hernandez. Thank you so much. That's all I have.
Thank you.
Caller, please state your full name for the record. You will have 3 minutes.
Hi there, Heather Casada. You guys are probably sick of hearing my voice, although you guys are new, so welcome. I just want to say I work here in town, or I did. I just want to say most people complaining on this stay at home, don't have to work, and don't have to provide for their families. It's really sad when people attack us for needing to provide for our families and make a living. Like, I really seriously don't get it. I also want to say, I've already been to a funeral this year for overdose because of all this stuff that's going on. It's hitting everyone differently, unfortunately. And I just urge everybody to follow the science. If y'all see the science, is everything coming from restaurants and hair salons? No, it's not. It's none of that is happening right now. It's all these family gatherings. I don't understand how somebody can shut down a small business with zero proof of cause. Like, I'm that person. If my business is causing all these COVID cases, by all means, shut me down. I wouldn't even hesitate. But for you to shut somebody down for no proof is absolutely ridiculous. And it's honestly, like, it's sickening to me. I'm really sad with my community lately. I feel like we should be supporting each other, and there's zero support. And I also want to say, too, before this ends, everyone needs to take responsibility for themselves. You know, it's not your problem to worry about everybody else. Everybody is a big person. They're adults. They don't need you to hold their hand and protect the community, because that's kind of bullshit crap. Sorry, I won't say the S word. But I'm just sick of it. I've been going through this for 10 months. I spoke at every single meeting. I'm sick of people attacking Peter Hernandez because he is the only one who was there for us. And I'm really kind of disappointed in people. Like, I'm so done. Like I said, if you could prove that I was the main source of this, by all means, shut me down as a business owner. But you don't. So, you know what? I really hope you guys reconsider and listen to the people, because that's who you work for. So have a great night. Thank you so much.
Boom.
Kelly, please state your full name for the record. You will have 3 minutes. Kelly, you've been unmuted. Please unmute yourself. Caller, please state your full name for the record. You will have 3 minutes.
Hello, this is Bob Marlowe. I would like to ask why you guys want the businesses shut down when the city just spent a ton of money funding the new development. They gave the new developers a lot of money to do that, and they're not going to make a whole lot of money back if the businesses are closed down. That's it. Thank you.
Rob, please state your full name for the record. You will have 3 minutes. Rob?
Give him. That's the second time.
Vidana, please state your full name for the record. You will have 3 minutes.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. Vidana Freitas, resident of San Benito County. I'm a little bit of a bottom line person, so there's a couple of things. First, for the caller that mentioned about the Petri dish experiment in biology class, just want to remind everybody that that's what you are putting into your mask right now and into the cloth that you wear on your face. So, Petri dish, thank you for that illumination. Also want to invite the lady of color who thinks it's important to smile and meet people in this community. Welcome. Come to #OpenSBC. We love you. And thank you for speaking up. I also want to thank the other gal that says she's a proud member of OpenSBC. We get attacked a lot, but we're growing. We've gotten over 1,000 members this last week, 100 just this week alone, based on what they're hearing on Tuesday's meeting. And also thank you, Peter, for being the lone voice for speaking up. So getting down to the bottom line, really comes down to this. Any citizen that wants to force another citizen to do something is not godly. That's not appropriate. And if one person is trying to force another person to do something, something is wrong. And so I think you guys need to look at yourselves a little bit and say, why is this so important to you? The second bottom line is, you keep talking about education and outreach. That's very disingenuous. The people of this community are smart, and they know their risks. They know what they need to do to take care of themselves and their families. And for you guys to pretend like this is about education and outreach is ridiculous. These people who choose not to mask and who choose to provide for their families and keep their business open, they're doing it out of their own education. So what you're really saying is you want to force something onto people who are thoughtful and have already made their decisions. And I think a couple other people have really nailed that lockdowns and masks do not work, so why are you insisting on it? There is no evidence-based practices for masking and lockdowns. That is a medical term. There's no evidence-based practices. All the science is contradicted, what you guys are talking about. So we don't even need to talk about the benefits of masking, not masking, and lockdowns. We just don't believe you. We've moved on. We don't understand why you feel that you know better than we do for us. You're telling us all that we're stupid, that we need to be educated, and you need to outreach us, and you need to tell us how to live our life, and you know what's better for us than to save our life.
Thank you.
Emily, please state your full name for the record. You will have 3 minutes.
Hi, my name is Emily Scow. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. I've spoken on these calls many times too. I'm a lifetime resident here in Hollister, born and raised, and I know you guys can't comment back, but again, I just want to ask the question. You guys always say that you have these, from the governor's telling you not to allow these small businesses to open. So when are you guys as a board of supervisors going to push back and push back on the governor to allow these small businesses to open? If it remains 3-6 months down the line, there will be no more businesses, and that's really sad. The hypocrisy of the big box stores, why can they have extended hours during holiday? I don't know if you guys are aware, but Target was open. They opened early. They opened 7 a.m. till midnight during the holiday hours with tons of people shopping for essential Christmas presents. Why was Baskin-Robbins deemed essential from the beginning? They never shut down. So last time I checked for our health, 2 scoops of ice cream is not essential. Yet these small businesses have followed all the guidelines that you guys gave them, and they have continued to have to be shut down when these numbers spike. So they keep having to pay the price. And just a flashback into summer, when we had the fires and our air quality was so bad, yet we still made those workers of restaurants serve outside and work outside in 100-degree weather. No one cared about their health then. So it's just not fair that the small businesses are having to pay the price. I think Heather might have mentioned, but if everyone talks about science, how many COVID cases are traced back to restaurants and hair salons? Last time I looked it up, it's about 4% for restaurants and less than 2% of COVID cases are traced back from contracting from a hair salon. Yet, you can go into Target. I was in Target for 2 hours shopping around. You can touch everything, and yet you can't go into a hair salon or you can't go into a restaurant and eat. I'm not understanding. Another caller had also mentioned, have you guys gone and talked to these local business owners that are hurting? I know Teresa at Milady has spent $15,000 for all the plexiglass and all this stuff, and yet she shut down again, and that's just not fair. I think the last thing is, another caller had mentioned, just talking about the health side of it, what are we doing besides closing down parks? That doesn't make any sense, but to educate people on health and building our immunity, getting out, getting exercise, so that we can, if we do contract COVID, that we can fight it and overcome it and be healthy, not just mask up and fines. I don't think that's effective. And
Thank you.
Celeste, please state your full name for the record. You will have 3 minutes.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, my name is Celeste Toledo Bocanegra. We, the community, have decided to begin a campaign to recall any member who refuses to listen to our concerns, starting with our mayor. It is your responsibility to listen to the majority of our community members who have called. For those interested in donating to help those remove those representatives who refuse to listen to the common good of our community, please contact me on Open SBC. That's where you will find me. Now, my personal concerns is our Hispanic community. I live within my Hispanic community, and I don't see very many gatherings. I know someone was stating that there's family gatherings, or I live near Buena Vista, and I don't see many family gatherings. We come home, we work. We're a hardworking community, and yes, I am concerned for our field workers. People say, and I see many posts where they say, thank goodness for our field workers, and praise them. Yes, of course, we need them. They are essential workers. But what about their children? Their children are being affected because of this shutdown. They have to go back to school. They don't understand how to use the basic skills to a computer. I have a first grader, and I can only imagine their difficulties in trying to understand what the hell is going on in the computer. So moving forward, our children also need to get out, and our sports community needs to open up. High school kids, just being in baseball or basketball, coordination skills that we developed in high school. Don't you guys remember? I'm sure you remember. You were young once. Now, sorry for everyone who has lost somebody due to COVID. I have been infected with COVID myself, and I understand the severity of it. I'm not trying to dismiss the science of it. We understand that it's very important. Thank you to Peter, but just like everyone who has said, we're not dumb. We know we're taking personal responsibility, and we can move forward. Each one person that lives in our community can figure it out. Also, I want to say thank you to Peter for holding his ground and helping us get through this. And other states and communities are open. They wear no masks. I was blessed to travel to Tennessee and Nashville, Tennessee, and I was actually there with a huge group of people who were fearless and not wearing masks during COVID. Vaccines, I'm very concerned
Thank you
about
very much. I appreciate it.
Valerie, please state your full name for the record. You will have 3 minutes.
Hi, my name is Valerie Snedden, and I'm the owner of Vintage Pearl Salon. I want to first thank Peter Hernandez because he has shown a lot of,
She's muted.
Valerie, please unmute yourself.
Valerie, are you there?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can now, ma'am.
Okay, sorry. Peter Hernandez has really helped the community and helped us small business owners, and I really want to thank him. As a small business owner, I truly feel that we need to work together and understand that this is not our problem. We shouldn't be punished for the gatherings of the other people the gathering of the public, basically, is what I'm saying.
Can you still hear me? Sorry.
Yes.
We can. Yes.
Okay. I feel that we as a community should be working together and not against each other and find a solution. We, as a community, need to, I'm sorry, I'm just very emotional right now with everything going on. It's very upsetting that everybody is so against each other, and us as small business owners, we need to work together and find a common ground in where we can figure out a situation that we can be working and not feel like we're breaking the law and not being torn apart. At the end of the day, I feel like we are being told that we are not allowed to do what we learned to do.
Thank you very much.
Fran, please state your full name for the record. You will have 3 minutes.
Hello, this is Fran Fitzharris, a local business owner. I just want to thank all of our Board of Supervisors. Certainly, I know that none of you have COVID experience on your resumes, so I thank you for what you guys are doing. It's not easy. Lots has been said tonight. All I want to say is that I was really excited early on when we had the focus groups. And if you recall, we had focus groups for all the different industries, hospitality, we had for schools, for churches, for gyms, salons, and I was really hopeful, and it was really a great start. And I want to ask that we try to get back to that and talking to the businesses. I want to commend Colin for going to Target, because I think that's come up a lot, and he actually goes out there and talks to those businesses, and we need to do a lot more of that. I'm not going to complain. I'm not going to criticize, because this is not an easy situation for anybody, but we have to work together, because that's the option right now. Work together. Thank you.
Thank you.
Cody, please say your full name for the record. You will have 3 minutes.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, this is Cody Dalton, lifelong Hollister resident. I just, there's been a lot going on and a lot has been said already tonight. And I do want to say thank you to you guys for putting together that PowerPoint presentation that kind of gave us some more insight on what was really going on as far as this ordinance goes, because there wasn't really a lot clear in the ordinance that was posted online. So thank you for that. My question to you guys is, what are we doing to stop the spread? In the slide earlier that was shown, it says that masks lower your risk by 50 to 70%. That may slow the spread, but what are we doing to stop it? 305 days we have been on this stay-at-home order, and it's progressively gotten worse. It's not working. These masks are like Band-Aids on bullet holes. It looks a little nicer, but it won't stop the bleeding. You're hiring enough staff for code enforcement to go around and enforce over 60,000 people. What is the cost to the county on that? Where does that money come from? I want to know what you're doing for the 720 COVID positive people in this county today. 20 are in the hospital, 700 are at home. Are they truly quarantining? What are we doing to ensure that they or the people in their household are not spreading this virus? Think to yourself, would you be prepared today if you started feeling ill or if you were exposed to COVID? How are these people getting groceries in order to stay home in quarantine? Masks may help lower the risk by 50 to 70%. And according to CDC, businesses account for only 2% of cases, and household gatherings account for 10% of cases. COVID positive patients are responsible for spreading 100%. We are not addressing the right issue here. 2 months ago, we had less than 50 active cases, and you dropped the ball when it came to keeping that contained. There was a woman speaking earlier talking about how you were the heroes of the county for wanting to shut down businesses and fine them for being open and spreading the virus, when that woman herself got her eyelashes done while having COVID and refused to share that knowledge. So ponder that. Should the salon worker get that punishment, or the woman knowingly continuing to spread it? Thank you, Peter Hernandez, for being the voice of the people. We all want this to end. We need to stop it at the source, and that is not local businesses. I hope that you guys take the time to do something that will help your community. Unfortunately, masks are not going to save our lives, and the cancel culture that you're creating is ruining our community and our quality of life. COVID will eventually end. We will get vaccinations. We will find other ways to get through it. It's your...
Thank you.
Rosalie, please state your full name for the record. You will have 3 minutes.
Hi, my name is Rosalie Tricomo, and I am a local hairstylist here. First of all, Peter Hernandez, I just appreciate all the hard work that you're doing fighting for us because, you know, I mean, we've been closed the majority of this year, and we don't have people fighting for us. It's like us against all these people who are just wanting to shut us down and not really address the problem. Give us facts, give us percentages. I don't know how many times I've seen on Facebook that people have been asking for how many sick COVID patients came from a salon and was spread from a salon. We've never been provided any facts whatsoever. And this is just disturbing that people are willing to just shut us down and fine us without even knowing what the statistics are. We have no idea. You spend more time trying to financially ruin us when you could be fighting for us. You know, I hear people say, well, that's not the mayor's job. This is not the mayor's job. The mayor can pick out a cool sign. You know what? The mayor's job is to fight for his people, not to hurt his people, not to fine them. I mean, that costs money to have the people to go around and find these people. I know so many people that have lost their salons, that are losing their homes, that have lost a loved one to suicide. Still, our mayor has not gone down to these small businesses to even see what protocols. Nobody from the city council has been to these salons to see what the protocols are that were being enforced by our governor, that we have been abiding by since day one they allowed us to open. You know, healthy people should not be punished for the sick. Those people that are having medical issues, that are obese, that have diabetes, that have, you know, that are heavy smokers, it's their job to take care of their own body. But the healthy people should not be punished. These businesses are closed, but the people that want to come and get their hair done have the option to choose to stay home or get their hair done. The family gatherings, okay, so you're going to find these small businesses for trying to make a living, but what fines are going to be put in place for the real problem, and that's these family gatherings? Is there going to be any repercussion? Because this is where it's coming from, but over and over again, you guys just keep penalizing us. There's no science behind the salons in this community that are spreading this illness rapidly. Zero. You want to talk about these masks? Well, if you Californians can remember when we had the Paradise Fire, they told us when our air quality was at 100% that we were to not leave our house with a paper mask or a properly fitted N95. All of this has left your brains because now you think this little cloth is going to save you.
Thank you.
David, please state your full name for the record. You will have 3 minutes. David, you've been unmuted. Please unmute yourself.
Yes, are you unmuted me here?
Yes,
Hello. Hello, I can hear you. I have unmuted myself. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Thank you. My name is David Marquez. I'm a Hollister resident, San Benito resident for over 55 years. I'm a surviving cancer member twice over. Been to both facilities in San Francisco and UCSF and Stanford. And the one thing I noticed was we all live in a world that there's many viruses and germs that can kill people. We all agree on that. But you know, when I went in to have chemo, not one person in the snack room was wearing a mask. They weren't requiring anybody to put a mask on as you walk to the front door. There was no hand sanitizers required. None of the doctors had masks. All the people sitting on the wall that didn't have cancer were not wearing masks. The only people wearing masks at Stanford were those who actually had chemo going on. So what did we learn from that? You mask the sick people. You don't mask the healthy people. You could walk over about 100 yards to the donut shop in the same building and grab some food and milk and sit down. They had no concerns about the germs you might be bringing in. Same thing at UCSF. How many times I walked in there to get some dangerous chemicals in my body? The doctors weren't wearing a mask. The nurses weren't wearing a mask. The guy who welcomes you at the front door wasn't wearing a mask. The only people wearing the mask at the time were the people receiving chemo. You don't put a mask on a healthy person. You don't shut down the donut shop inside there and you send them home and you tell them, wear your mask. You've just been given with chemo. That's it. That's how I see it. If you're susceptible, stay home. If you're not, take your precautions. I believe this disease is real. Take your precautions. Wear a mask if you got to go shopping. If you can't do that, let somebody do the shopping for you. Wash your hands. Be considerate of others. But think about the chemo people there. Everybody didn't wear masks. Only the people that were so sick wore the masks. That's where I'm coming from. Use the examples that are out there pre-COVID. It just seems strange, doesn't it, that nobody was required to wear a mask. Thank you for your time. Thank you for my time.
Thank you, sir.
Michelle, please state your full name for the record. You will have 3 minutes.
Hi, my name is Michelle Perry, and I have a small business in Hollister. I really agree with that guy that was just on right now where he talked about you don't really, the mask should be for people that are sick, not for people that are healthy. One of the things that is one of my concerns is that masks are not going to work 100%. People are still going to get sick. And with new strains coming, people are still going to get sick. And what's happening with the small businesses is we are being punished. And you guys say that you aren't punishing us, but basically we are your scapegoat. You can't go after big box stores. They have big attorneys. We don't. So you can use us as examples to push your agenda through of what you're doing. You can't go after people in homes because you have no recourse. But you can go after people that have business licenses that are supporting this community with their businesses. And you have bullied us and you have discriminated against us. And what really concerns me is that if you guys are serious, I told you this the other day, if you are serious about stopping this virus in this community, and this is such a big deal, then what you need to do is stop shopping. You can go to the bank, you can go to the gas station, you can go to the grocery store. You don't need any other luxuries. We don't get them if we don't have our money. So why should other people have that? If you're so concerned about it, then stop everything. Stop Ace Hardware, stop the realtors, stop everything else. Target, everything. Just shut everything down. Dollar Tree. I mean, the list goes on and on. Everything is open except for your restaurants, your hair salons. It's ridiculous. And we have guidelines that we have to follow that are given to us by the state, and we don't even get to be open. I don't understand it. And I agree with these people that say if somebody is afraid to go out, then don't go. Don't go out. If you're compromised, do not go out. But there's a lot of people that are not compromised that want to be able to go get their hair done and go have a nice dinner at a restaurant. And I know you guys are stuck with the governor's rules and everything that they have to do. So it's almost unlikely that anything is even going to get accomplished tonight other than just this mask order thing. But I totally disagree with it. I feel like you should give everybody an opportunity to explain how they even run their businesses. When we go to work, we have to wear masks. We have to put masks on our clients. We have to wash our laundry at 170 degrees hot water. There's certain things that we have to do, but if you don't come into the businesses and see how we run our businesses, you will never know. You will never know the guidelines that we follow on a day-to-day basis to do our job. Thank you.
Thank you.
Kelly, please state your full name for the record. You will have 3 minutes.
Thank you. My name is Jennifer Palmer. I am not a Hollister native. I was born and raised in San Jose. So moving to Hollister 15 years ago was a big change for me. And I was proud to live in this community. It was very family oriented. It was what I needed, what my son needed. And right now, it just feels like this is all based in fear. And that's not okay. Yes, COVID is real. And we've all faced sickness of some sort. And I am very sorry for anybody who's had to deal with COVID, who has to work with COVID, who's lost a loved one to COVID. I've lost loved ones myself, not to COVID, but for other reasons. So I understand that. But we should not live in fear. The mask is fear-inducing. The media is fear-inducing. All of this is inducing fear. And like a previous caller said, that's not godly. And even if you don't believe in God, who wants to live in fear? Nobody wants to live in fear. So I am asking all of you to let us, the people, use our common sense. We know to wash our hands. We know not to cough on others. The things we're taught when we're little. Let us use our common sense, and let us have our businesses thrive, because at the end of the day, we all need to feed our families. We all need a roof over our heads. And I've personally known what it's like to not necessarily have a firm roof over my head. Let these people do their jobs. And if people choose to live in fear, that's their choice. Let us have our common sense. If you are in need of staying home, stay home. Otherwise, go out, live your life, and don't be afraid, because that's no way to live. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Al, please state your full name for the record. You will have 3 minutes. Al, you've been unmuted. Please unmute yourself.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
I don't know.
Yes, we can hear you.
I'm sorry. Okay. Yeah, my name is Al Guerra. I've been in the community for 74 years. I guess I'm cursed and blessed with common sense, in my opinion. I fail to recognize the necessity of the fines and punishments. I have not seen anyone without a mask in a public place. In our size community, rewarding individuals to turn in their neighbors is not the same as it is in San Francisco. I feel it will lead to hateful feelings and is a dangerous experiment, especially at a time when the country's death rate and positive test rate are falling rapidly in the country. Our community leaders, chose to spend tax dollars for downtown patios that are not allowed to be in use, while at the same time backing shutdown because our hospital didn't have enough beds. It would seem like that's a good place to spend money. You've had 10 months to choose beds over patios. It's time for leadership. I understand that the liberal bastions of San Francisco and Sacramento have been temporarily released from at-home bondage and allowed to eat out. Why are you four liberal Democrats so interested in more lockdowns and punishments? I was hoping our leaders could help our community to open. I support open SBC. Please try to represent all your constituents like Peter Hernandez does. Thank you.
Tony, please state your full name for the record. You will have 3 minutes.
Hi there, my name is Tony Matthews. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. In my job here in the community, I talk to a lot of the community, and the consensus that I get is that people are angry. They're upset. And it's not just because they're stuck at home, it's because they feel like they're being failed. In that failure, they look to the people that they voted into office to be the leaders. And I really, really hope you guys are listening to what people are saying tonight, because these people are your community and they're talking to you and they're telling you that if you find them, then that's going to just add fuel to the fire of that anger that they already have. This is a community right now that is gone down the tubes, and their morale, they are facing losing homes, losing businesses, losing their livelihoods to be able to live life. And without living life, that's why people are committing suicide. You guys are the people who need to listen to them and what they are telling you. Let them live again, and don't fail them. And that's all I got to say.
Thank you.
Jackie, please state your full name for the record. You will have 3 minutes.
Jackie Morris Lopez, lifelong citizen of San Juan Bautista, District 2. Good evening, supervisors, and I thank you, Supervisor Bob Tiffany, Supervisor B. Ramirez, Supervisor Mark Medina, and Supervisor Colin Kuzmicki. I appreciate the ad hoc committee's formation to address this pandemic. I listened here for over an hour and a half, and I have to honestly say the majority of the callers have been from a very vocal and misguided and misinformed group called Open Up San Benito County. I believe they do not listen to the science. They're bullying you all. I hear veiled threats, and I hear praise for a board of supervisor who is promoting the misinformation and misguiding. When they claim that you are shutting down small businesses, I say that is a false statement. There are restaurants that are open. There are other businesses that are open, small grocery stores, not just big box, and they are adhering to the rules. The businesses that are shut and the people that are speaking for Open Up San Benito mainly represent personal care businesses. These are hair salons and nail salons. We all know that right now, the reason those are shut are well stated in the California government's guidelines. If we had listened to the science and followed the science many months ago, and if we had had full support from our federal government at the federal level, we wouldn't be sitting here. I don't blame any of the supervisors. I don't blame our governor. This is something that we were failed by our federal government. Right now, we have a new administration coming on board on January 20th. They're talking about putting out money to help small businesses and citizens. I'm hoping that people listen to the science. As you all know, I'm a Stanford-trained PA, 22 years practicing, and right now, 40 hours a week, I am dealing with giving out positive results. And the mask does work, and as we all know, there's a more contagious virus right now. This is not about taking away personal freedoms. This is about dealing with a pandemic. It's a deadly pandemic. It's very sad to see people try to misguide and misrepresent that you are shutting down small businesses. You are not. And I applaud your courageous decision that you will make, and you will do it based on science. Thank you.
Nick, please state your full name for the record. You will have 3 minutes.
Nick Torlini. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. Well, I'd like to start by saying thank you to Mr. Hernandez. And then the other 4 of you folks that were voted into office, it sounds like all but the last lady that called seems like is really against this. And it doesn't sound like it's really really healthy to go against what everybody's wishes are. I'd like to address Mr. Tiffany. Mr. Tiffany, what if somebody took away your FMC? What if FMC stopped delivering trucks to you or stopped delivering parts to you and shut you down right in the middle of your best months? You know, your best months, probably June, July. I know. I work for Ford, so I know. So how would you like someone to remove everyone out of your place and have you stuck selling cars, selling parts, doing service all by yourself? If nobody else listens, at least Mr. Tiffany might listen. I understand, and I get that you guys have to do something. Punishing people, finding them, making a criminal act out of trying to run a business and put food on the table is wrong. Mr. Tiffany, I want you to think about that. I want you to think about a line full of people sitting out your dealership and nobody there to help them. I want you to think about that. B, I could just see you rolling your eyes. Every caller, except that last one. You guys, you need to hear these voices that are telling you to vote, not to vote against this. I mean, to vote against this. It does not make sense. And I'm addressing Mr. Tiffany because we have a lot in common. He just doesn't know it, okay? But I'm hoping that we can change his mind so we'll have one more vote. That's all I got to say. Have a good night.
Rob, please state your full name for the record. You will have 3 minutes.
Okay, Rob Brodowski, 4th try. Thank you for taking the time to listen to me. I must say, I agree with a lot that the last caller said. Mr. Tiffany, you're my supervisor. Just imagine what he is talking about there. And you're sitting on tens of millions of dollars of inventory, or at least multiple millions of inventory, and you're stuck with it. Interest is accruing, and maybe your house is on the line because you personally guaranteed it. I'll never know what the personal circumstances of you operating Tiffany Ford when you operated it. But that's the terror that I spoke of in the when I called earlier this week. But more importantly, look, this is a meeting of the Board of Supervisors in public. It's not a meeting of the public and the Board of Supervisors. The one thing that is just killing me listening to this is, why are the Board of Supervisors not debating this, talking about the facts back and forth and the opinions? It just seems like, and Colin, I have a great amount of respect for you, but after the last meeting, you read from a prepared statement of your comments after the public comment. You appeared to not even listen to us. So what I would like to see is you Board of Supervisors actually discussing the issues, going back and forth, and find that middle ground. I've resolved myself that there's going to be some sort of ordinance, but please, let's hear the back and forth. Let's meet in the middle between, we'll call it the Hernandez group and everybody else. You all are elected, and you're supposed to debate these issues and have an intelligent conversation. Because the one thing that you have never presented is any data that suggests that in Community A, the enforced mask ordinance in cases went down. Everybody's just using a lot of conjecture and assumptions, but where is the data? As business people, Mr. Tiffany, Mr. Hernandez, Mr. Medina, B, I apologize, I don't know what you do for a living, but when you make a business decision, it's with data and facts. And I just don't hear any of this presented. So please, I implore you, let's watch the Board of Supervisors go back and forth with some facts and come up with a reasonable conclusion and maybe a reasonable ordinance. Because again, as I emphasized last time, there's going to be a lot of anger in the community if you do enforce a oppressive ordinance that you know you're not really going to be able to enforce. And if you do enforce it, it's just going to make people miserable. Because again, if you walk around our community right now, I'd say 99.9%.
Thank you.
And please state your full name for the record. You will have 3 minutes.
Ann Vasquez, I want to thank the Board of Supervisors for getting us to this point. I'm hopeful tonight that you will enact these regulations and begin to address the horrible toll uncontrolled spread is having on our community. I realize doing this tonight is taking a great deal of political courage. I know from the supervisors I have spoken to that you understand the science and the need for people to follow the health orders. The guy who spoke earlier, he's right. In communities where there's compliance, like San Francisco and Sacramento, numbers are down, are open. People need to realize you don't control what is open. That's the state. This is about businesses and individuals who want us to be open, but through their own behaviors, their refusal to follow the orders, that's why we're closed. If we bring down our numbers, we can begin to open. Now that vaccines are here, we're probably looking at spring or summer for the numbers to really start going down. If we continue just where we are now at a death a day and do nothing, that's another 120 dead community members. As resources become strained or exponential growth takes over, this number could be even higher. I urge you to enact this ordinance tonight. Do what you know is right. Community division is a given in the next few months. The question is, will it be driven by the behavior of those whose ideology has trumped rational thought and who rely on disinformation and the death of our neighbors, or only by the displeasure at having their behavior constrained? I'm really proud of you guys. I know this is a really hard thing to do, and I thank you for standing up for our community.
Thank you.
Raylan, please state your full name for the record. You will have 3 minutes.
Hi, my name is Raylene Nunes, and I'm a resident of this lovely town. And this is my first time on Zoom and also my first time at a council meeting. So thank you. I'm a senior citizen, well into my 70s, and I'm scared. I'm very scared. I don't want to die. We stay home. We only go to the grocery store when we have to. Otherwise, we order in, and when we have to go to the doctor. If you opened every business tomorrow, and if you said no one has to wear masks, I wouldn't be one of those. I will not go back into a business, and I will not take off my mask until I know and I feel it's safe. This is not how I want to die. I've seen people die. In fact, there's a man in our community right now who's having a tube installed as we speak. He's a business owner. You'll hear about it. It's not good. It's not good at all. I appreciate what you're doing. I know it's tough, but for the businesses that want to open, I won't be there. I know a lot who won't be there. We won't be there until we feel it's safe, so we can enjoy our community again. So thank you, and I pray for you, and I hope that you can continue on and keep our community safe. Thank you.
Thank you.
Heather, please state your full name for the record. You will have 3 minutes.
Hi, this is Heather Hickerson. I'm resident of Hollister for 28 years. After speaking out for a mask and enforcement mandate on Tuesday, I felt so encouraged to hear from the other typically silent majority that they felt the same way. When I spoke 3 days ago, we had more than doubled our casualties within a month and almost doubled our confirmed positive cases. Today, we have yet another death, which I believe brings us to 13 losses in 13 days. Without having an enforcement mandate in our toolkit to help us fight this, I fear that the numbers will continue to dramatically rise. Our neighbors will continue to lose their livelihoods, and even worse, their lives. We have the ability to slow the spread, but we must take drastic measures to do so. Other countries have done so much better with their numbers because enforcement works. This is something that should have been done months ago. So it's finally time for us to at least have the ability to enforce these rules before more people get sick or lose their lives. I'm asking you to vote yes on a mask and enforcement ordinance. Thank you so much for your time and for your consideration.
Thank you.
Melissa, please state your full name for the record. You will have 3 minutes.
Good evening. My name is Melissa Gong. I am a founding member of Successfully Opening Safely San Benito County. I'm also a registered nurse working in Santa Clara County. I also want to state, because there seems to be some concern about this, I am a San Benito County resident for 22 years and a proud member of a San Benito County legacy family that owned and operated several small businesses, which many people on this call tonight frequented for years. I personally want to start by calling out #OpenSBC for what it really is: a right-wing extremist, anti-science conspiracy theory machine of bullies endorsed by a sitting member of the Board of Supervisors, Peter Hernandez. Everyone thanking him while he has blood on his hands due to his dereliction of duty in mitigating the spread of COVID-19. This ordinance doesn't advocate for lockdowns. It advocates for enforcement of health orders to save lives, of which 41 have been lost, 13 in the last 13 days. Our county is a dumpster fire of COVID. As Supervisor Tiffany stated, we are number 5 of 58 counties in our state of COVID infections. Our county looks to other counties around us in Monterey, Santa Cruz, and Santa Clara County for assistance when our hospital system becomes overloaded. Yet we've done nothing to mitigate the spread as they have in Santa Clara, Santa Cruz, and Monterey County. I emphatically implore the Board of Supervisors, our public health officer, our county sheriff, and enforcement to recognize the gravity and severity of the current COVID-19 crisis in our county and commit to the safety of our county as its residents, and start doing the hard work of enforcement by instituting a county-wide social distancing protocol, a health order effective immediately that will result in monetary fines for businesses that continue to operate in violation of the state's shelter-in-place order, and to finally institute a county-wide mask mandate with monetary enforcement for businesses and individuals that refuse to abide by that mandate. Finally, I ask that the Board of Supervisors consider censure of Supervisor Hernandez for wanton endangerment of members of the community by associating with, supporting, and participating in a far-right extremist group. Thank you.
Loretta, please state your full name for the record. You will have 3 minutes.
Good evening, Board of Supervisors. I'm Loretta Avina. I've lived in Hollister for 32 years. Thank you for a very clear PowerPoint presentation tonight. I'm actually very surprised that some people didn't quite understand some of those very clear slides. I'm speaking tonight in support of a mandate to wear masks in public places, and I also support Successfully Opening Safely San Benito County. I'm speaking tonight, and I'm coming from a very emotional place because there's a family member, an active member of this community in the hospital and fighting for his life battling COVID. I believe in the science that wearing masks does help to stop the spread of COVID. I wear a mask because I care about you and our community. The few community members that insist on not wearing a mask and are spreading misinformation about how a mask does not work are irresponsible. Their selfishness makes me very angry. The fact is that we have lost 42 local residents as of today. We had an additional death, as you know. It doesn't even seem to faze this group of people, and I find that criminal. I cannot believe that we are even arguing about human decency today, people. Where is our humanity? Where is our empathy? I will never be able to forgive or forget this group of people in our community who, instead of doing the right thing to protect members of our community, instead are doing the opposite. I know that you may have received phone calls from these same people and individuals pressuring you not to pass the ordinance, telling you that your political career is over, blah, 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 if you don't pass it. But I ask you, what is more important, your political career or helping to save lives? Being a politician requires you to have courage, moral courage, to do the right thing when the time calls, even in the face of opposition. You have to push aside their rhetoric and concentrate on common sense, science, and the overall safest and best thing for the majority of this community. In your own words, I quote you, "Our intent is not to close any businesses, but we have a responsibility to protect public health." Yes, that is one of your responsibilities as elected leaders, and one where Supervisor Hernandez has failed. There will be no one to govern. There will be no community if we were all sick and dead from this pandemic. Remember, if you do not pass and then enforce something, people will continue to get sick from COVID and they will continue to die. I don't know about you, but I'm tired of hearing from we the people and their non-science information that they are spreading in this community. I'd like for them to talk to me when they have watched a loved one die from COVID. At Open SBC, you say that this is addressed to Open SBC, you say that you don't believe the science, you know better. Well, I'd love to see your medical degree and your medical data that contradicts Dr. Fauci and the CDC. There is no time to discuss and debate in committee, as Bernosky just said, because if we listen to him or Hernandez, more people will die.
Thank you very much.
Mr.
Thank you.
Susan, please state your full name for the record. You will have 3 minutes.
Hi, my name is Susan Lowe. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, thank you so much, supervisors, for being here and for the community for participating. I just want to say that I'm sure as a community, we understand that there are many businesses that are suffering, and there are many community members that are also suffering. I think the majority of the Board of Supervisors members understand that we need to support science and mask wearing, distancing, and washing our hands. And I think as representatives, you accept these kinds of ideas for science. So I want to thank you for being there tonight and for promoting science and what we need to survive as a community. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Leslie, please state your full name for the record. You will have 3 minutes.
Hi, this is Leslie Jordan with the City of San Juan Bautista, the Mayor of City of San Juan Bautista. I would like to thank the Board of Supervisors for considering the adoption of this urgency order and for upholding the orders and the guidelines of the state of California, and for working with the cities and the state and ensuring that when we do open, we can do it in a manner that is safe for all. I appreciate all of your time. I appreciate what you are all doing for the county, for the cities. Thank you.
Thank you.
Amber, please state your full name for the record. You will have 3 minutes.
Hi, my name is Amber Henderson. I have a few things to say. Let's see. I do have grave concerns about the lack of, turning this into an administrative thing instead of a legal issue, really, where those who are ticketed, they don't get to, they have to go through a route of administration instead of, say, a court of law. So I just want to state that. But I also want to share a few things with you. I often tell people when they are, when I feel that we need to open our minds a little bit more, get some better ideas I often say you need to get out more, and I don't mean that as an insult. I've lived all over the U.S., and we're happy to have called Hollister our home for the last decade. But one of the things that I have gained from traveling, living in communities all over the U.S. and in other countries is perspective. I want to read to you a few of the things that are being done just this week in other communities around the country and in our state by leaders to quell the hysteria and encourage health in their communities. On a highway marquee in South Dakota, in an effort to positively remind people to make level-headed decisions, the message reads, "Arrive alive, then wear a mask." A hospital recording in Wisconsin says begins when you call them, begins with quote, "Per CDC guidelines, we will not give COVID testing to those who do not have symptoms. If you want to be tested with no present symptoms, please call your primary care physician." In Santa Clara County in California, this week, it was sent out a message promoting Picks in Parks, a physical and mental health program to encourage community members, to encourage community camaraderie and in members of the community. I'm sorry, I know I'm running out of time. Ask yourselves, please, what are you going to be doing to positively affect our community?
Thank you very much.
Kevin, please state your full name for the record. You will have 3 minutes.
Hi, my name is Kevin Barcelos, and I live in District 1. I've spoken many times on this subject, and you know where I stand on the question of whether the county needs the additional enforcement tools that this ordinance provides. Tools which are milder than those in the counties around us. The local pandemic situation is dire. We are currently in the middle of a peak, on top of a surge, which happened on top of another surge. If we had acted sooner, it's very possible the situation would be very different today. But the fact that we didn't act then makes it imperative that we do so now. Not just to prevent needless death and suffering, at the very same time the vaccine rollout is happening, but to support the heroic men and women at Hazel Hawkins Hospital. They've not only been fighting every hour of every day to keep members of our community alive, but are also absorbing and sequestering our cumulative trauma and grief, all out of sight of us all. We owe it to them and all of the families grieving their losses to act. And when this is over, we should formally acknowledge their service on our behalf. But there is another topic that I think equally important. The question on the table tonight is not new. We've discussed the same subject multiple times during board meetings and other forums since last spring. 2 months ago, we had an election where at least 2 candidates who were members of and were supported by Open SBC were defeated resoundingly at the ballot box, including for one of the seats on this very board. The silent majority spoke loud and clear on November 3rd, which may explain the eagerness of one supervisor to silence their voices by refusing to certify our election results. On Tuesday and again tonight, speakers, including one very well-known member of Open SBC, told you that if you pass an ordinance, people will be angry. But if you don't, no one will care. And I know many of you are hearing the same thing in your individual communications with those that oppose this ordinance. Now, aside from the fact that this is the political equivalent of an abuser telling his victim that it's her fault if she gets hit again, this is also the same sort of intimidation by anger that we witnessed at the U.S. Capitol last week and is being openly threatened this weekend and beyond. Please do not reward these tactics. I strongly urge a yes vote on this ordinance, and I thank you very much for doing the right thing for our community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Irma, please state your full name for the record. You will have 3 minutes.
Hello, my name is Idama Gonzalez. On behalf of the silent majority, thank you Supervisor Tiffany, Kaminsky, Medina, and Gonzalez. Sadly, sanity, empathy, and competence seems to have been undervalued motivators of some past and current members of this board. Let's be clear, we're here because of the failure of the previous board. It's hard to wrap your head around how many people we've lost and will continue to lose. Just this week, we've had 5 deaths. My condolences to the families of the 43 souls in our community that are no longer with us. That's 1 a day for the past week. I agree with the caller asking, why is Baskin Robbins allowed to be open? I have to ask, why is a shaved ice place allowed to be open as well? Doesn't make sense to any of us. She's right. To our new board members, please be the leadership we've been waiting for. Our local hospitals are experiencing a surge upon a surge. The crisis of deep human suffering is in plain sight, and there's no time to waste. Sadly, we are in this position because of the selfishness and arrogance of a few who put their own contempt and disregard for decency ahead of the health and safety of others. This pandemic is far from over. This ordinance is what we need. We need it now. While wearing masks correctly is not the only solution, it is a profoundly important pillar of pandemic control. Masks can help retail, offices, and restaurants keep their doors open, but due to horrific leadership on the part of a few and public intimidation by others, local mandates are non-existent and are necessary. It's a well-established law that elected officials have the right and the responsibility to take actions to protect public health. The first responsibility of government is, as our Constitution states, to provide for common defense. As far as what's the practical aspect, it's twofold: saving lives and also following the state mandates, which you all took an oath to do. It's time to save lives and give San Benito County its best chance of success by enacting this ordinance. You were elected to lead, and I'm asking you to do that tonight. Thank you for following our Constitution and our laws. Please place public health first. I support successfully opening safely San Benito County. Please enact this ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mia, please state your full name for the record. You will have 3 minutes.
Good evening. This is Mia Casey from Hollister. And a lot has already been said, so I'm not going to rehash. But I do want to say that I'm very happy to see the way this ordinance was written. I was a little concerned because, you know, nobody wants to punish or penalize small businesses, especially that are struggling. So I was pleased to see that there will be warnings given and that there's tiers of enforcement. You know, we have to be honest, you know, it probably isn't small businesses that are the main source of spread. But let's look at when things started spiking after the Thanksgiving holiday and now again after the Christmas holidays, because people aren't staying apart. They're gathering, and it's a problem. And that's why we're seeing the numbers we're seeing. And it's also winter, which doesn't help. But I'm glad that the Board of Supervisors has the courage to do something now. I think it's time. I think we have to. We can't keep losing people. So I appreciate all your efforts and the well-written mandate, and I hope that you will approve it. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Speaker, please state your full name for the record. You will have 3 minutes.
Hello. I'm sorry. Hello there. My name is Randy French.
You're on 2 different devices. Can you turn one device off,
Yeah.
please?
I have 30 years in public safety as a retired public safety lieutenant. Hold on just a second here.
Thank you, sir.
Hold on. Okay. Are you still there?
Yes, sir.
So my point is that I think you guys are in a tough spot. I mean, the bottom line is that, you know, perception is reality, and no matter how you vote, people are going to be upset with you. So in that regards, I feel sorry for you guys. You're damned if you do, and you're damned if you don't. So I'm not here to take sides. I appreciate everybody's viewpoint. Of course, I follow more along the lines of Mr. Hernandez. I think that there is some issues here that just don't make any sense to me. I hear people calling orders, but then I hear the state is only giving guidelines. People want to follow along with what the governor wants, but I guess we're all in the entertainment business. Our hair business wouldn't have to worry about it because they're exempt for some unknown reason. And big box stores. I mean, you want to prevent me from getting together with my family at a family function, but I guess if we all meet at the Target store and stand around together for an hour or two and split a sandwich, it's okay because we're in a Target store and we're not sitting at my house. So again, I mean, it's ludicrous to think that you're actually penalizing anybody except the poor individuals who are just trying to make money to survive. You know, I have yet to hear anybody come online and sit there and say, hey, I'm going broke and my family can't survive, but I'm grateful that they're going to enact this mask ordinance because my life is going to be better. Gee, I haven't heard that coming from somebody. So in that regard, I'm a little confused. And, you know, one of the things I get on with is the fact that, you know, the definition of insanity is trying to do the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. We've been at this for, what, 9-10 months? Everywhere I go, people wear a mask. I wear a mask just out of, you know, respect for others. But it's the flu season. People are indoors. There's no sunlight, and people are going to get sick. So to think that you're going to force somebody a fine is going to make any difference. And again, the bottom line is it's going to look like you guys are trying to make life miserable for everybody, especially the small business owner, instead of going after the big box stores where it's probably really occurring. So I just don't understand the
Thank you, sir.
there.
Caller, please state your full name for the record. You will have 3 minutes.
Hi, my name is Andrew Homan, and I don't agree with a lot of people that are saying Mr. Hernandez is an extreme right-wingist. I believe that he's done what he believes is right for who he represents, and a lot of you other people aren't doing what you should be doing. And yeah, I think this meeting is kind of dumb. Everyone's just attacking each other, and no one's coming up with any solutions. So I think we should come up with some solutions and stop attacking everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Elia, please state your full name for the record. You will have 3 minutes. Elia, you've been unmuted. Please unmute yourself. Monica, please state your full name for the record. You will have 3 minutes.
Hi, my name is Monica Saldana, and I just wanted to say that as a small business owner, I've been here since 1990. I am a hairstylist, yes. As a small business owner, the only ones that are closed right now are salons and restaurants. And I just want to say that as they're saying to open, we are the only ones that are closed. I went to school to learn about client protection and sanitation. And every time we have a large shutdown, the numbers have gone up, which proves that we are protecting our clients. We are in a place of sanitation and protection. I believe in Jesus Christ as my Lord and Savior, and I believe that He has made science. And I have seen every single one of you, except for Colin, touch their face, touch your eyes, scratch your neck, touch your hair. I believe that's part of the spread. And I think that part of the solution is either to close everything down except for frontliners for at least 2 weeks to stop the spread, or leave everything open and let everyone to their livelihood. I thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Elia, please state your full name for the record. You will have 3 minutes. Elia, you've been unmuted. Please unmute yourself. We have no more speakers at this time.
She popped back up. Want to see if
Elia, please state your full name for the record. You will have 3 minutes.
Unmute. Okay, Dulce, can you hear me now?
Yes,
Yes.
ma'am.
Okay, sorry about that. I have no idea what's going on here. Anyway, I want to thank the supervisors from early on. You decided to close down the county. Early on, you were ahead of everything, and unfortunately, for the last 10 months, what has been going on has not been happening behind closed doors that people have been saying. What's been going on is the fact that people are not following the rules, and it's unfortunately fell upon the last board and nothing was passed. And it's not like something is happening today that's being discussed all of a sudden in an emergency. You have been discussing this on the board for 10 months. Something needs to be done. We have 43 family members that have passed. I now know people in my social circle that I know people on first name basis. They're actually on a ventilator in ICU. We have a young man, a 25-year-old who just lost his father just 3 days ago. We have somebody who lost their grandfather last week. We know people now. I know people now, and I didn't before. It was 2 or 3 hands full over. So something has to be done, and people are saying that they're adults, they can take care of themselves, and it's my body, and if I'm it's blaming people because they happen to be overweight or accusing people that they have unhealthy lifestyles. It's just ridiculous. People have proven that they are not able to take care of themselves, and something has to be done. It is not the board who's making a decision to shut down businesses. This was done by the state of California. People continue to defy, and this is the only way that it can happen. People are having weddings, people are having quinceañeras, people are having parties, and the state has already told us what is the limit of people that can gather, and people continue to violate that. We have a supervisor who had a rally for Christmas, and he was there not wearing a mask, opening people to come on over. But people were there. I drove by. People were not wearing masks. People were gathered. Supervisor Peter Hernandez, you must be accountable for what you're doing. You're responsible for what's going on by telling people that they can go ahead and do what they want, and they can go against what the state mandate has said. Supervisor Peter Hernandez, you should be transparent to the people out there. You know that you have COVID. You haven't told people that you have COVID, and you should also I hope that you're doing your contact tracing for people, that people know where you have been, because you have the possibility of having other people be infected by this. Be transparent with the people, Supervisor Hernandez, and please, Supervisor.
Thank you, ma'am.
Please approve.
Thank you. Thank you.
Kevin, please state your full name for the record. You will have 3 minutes.
Thank you. My name's Kevin Henderson. COVID is going to end eventually, regardless of what decision you make tonight. Your job as supervisors is to serve the community here in San Benito County, not become arms of the state of California. Check the facts. California is one of the worst performing states in managing the COVID virus when compared to other states. They obviously don't know what they are doing. Now that the vaccine is here, check the facts. California is lagging the country in distributing the vaccine. Why are the supervisors wanting to become extensions of this failure? You are talking about the wrong things. You are debating whether a mask or closing down businesses is going to help solve the problem. Why aren't you figuring out how to get this vaccine to our community as quickly as possible? Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
We have no more callers at this time.
At this point in time, this closes public comment. Can we take a 5-minute recess? Thank you. bring it back to the board. I can start off with the ad hoc committee. If they have any comments, they can speak first.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
So first off, I want to thank the CAO, the County Council, and other staff for their vigorous commitment to getting this ordinance developed. We're fortunate to have such a tremendous, hardworking, caring staff. And I can't say enough about my experience working with Supervisor Tiffany to help craft this ordinance. His thoughtful, balanced, and bold approach is precisely what we needed during this crisis. District 4 and we as a county are fortunate to have him as a leader. There is nothing political about this decision. It cannot be political, not when lives and livelihoods are on the line. We must base this decision on science, data, and practicality. We must base this decision on doing what's best in the name of public health. As I've said before, as someone who sincerely values our business community and understands this pandemic's devastation to residents' livelihoods, the purpose of this ordinance is not to punish. It is quite the opposite. The purpose is to save lives, reduce suffering, keep our community safe, end this horror, and responsibly reopen our economy as soon as possible. Emotions are high on both sides of this issue for good reason. Business owners and affected employees are rightfully frustrated and angered. But we shouldn't point that frustration and anger at health professionals and others who are working hard to address this crisis. We should all point our frustration and anger at the deadly disease that continues wreaking havoc on our community and throughout the world. While I understand frustrations, I cannot sympathize with the notion that rules and enforcement are an infringement of civil liberties or constitutional rights. We live in a civilized society where law and order are essential, especially when it comes to protecting the health and safety of our community. Because I may disagree with a 30-mile-per-hour speed limit, that doesn't give me the right to drive 100 miles per hour. Because I may feel it's my right to cough in someone's face or sneeze on someone's food, it doesn't give me the right to do so. Because a restaurant owner may not prioritize sanitation, it doesn't give him or her the right to ignore it. Because someone may not believe in wearing masks or modifying their business practices in a once-in-a-lifetime deadly pandemic, it doesn't give him or her the right to dismiss the rules put in place to keep our community safe. These reckless actions must end now. A quite lengthy list of documented local violators of the stay-at-home order truly underscores the problem's gravity and why a comprehensive enforcement ordinance is absolutely necessary. The honor system simply doesn't work. That is why I support this urgency ordinance and its focus on the following: pursuing voluntary compliance from offenders, prioritizing high-risk violations, holding large stores, which have benefited greatly from this crisis, accountable for their apathy, penalizing anti-maskers who flaunt their disregard for others' health, cracking down on super spreader household parties and event venues, and eradicating the chaos in this community caused by a lack of direction. At this point, with infections, hospitalizations, and deaths spiking at an alarming rate, a mask mandate itself is not nearly enough and would largely act as a symbolic gesture when much bolder action is essential. We as county supervisors are elected to lead and make difficult decisions in the best interest of our community. We were not elected to please our friends, political allies, or a vocal minority. As individual speakers and as a group, failing to act boldly now not only neglects our duty as leaders, but also makes us complicit in this crisis and the added suffering non-action will cause. We must do everything in our power to slow the spread of this disease. We must approve this ordinance. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Supervisor Tiffany?
Thank you, Chairperson Medina. I also want to thank the county for working so hard to put this ordinance together, and also Supervisor Kosmicki, who he and I worked together very closely over the last few days to get this done, and I think his good ideas and thinking was a good balance to my approach. And anyway, it was. I think we came to what I believe is a good ordinance. Let me just say that. It's terrible listening to everyone speak about this from the standpoint of it is such a divisive issue for our community. I'm a very long-time member of this community, fourth generation, and it hurts me to hear people I know on both sides be so upset, so angry. I would disagree with one of the speakers tonight who said that if we vote this ordinance in, there will be a lot of people that are very angry, but if we don't, the other side will not be angry. Well, I don't agree. I think there will be people angry whichever way we go. When I decided or was contemplating running for this position, a long-time friend of mine who has been in politics before said to me, you're going to be in a no-win position, and probably, he said, most of the time when you're a supervisor, you hope that roughly, 2/3 of the people agree with you. He says, in this case, probably 2/3 are going to be pissed off at you all the time. So, here we are. But I ran, as was earlier stated, I ran on a platform that I was very open about the fact that I believe that we had to be science first and science driven in dealing with COVID-19, and we had to put the health and safety of our citizens ahead of everything else. And that's difficult for me to say because I am a fellow business owner, or at least I was for many, many years, and I feel for each and every business owner that spoke tonight and spoke Tuesday night and have sent all of us emails and texts in the last number of days. And by the way, there are easily an equal number of people that have contacted all of us in addition to tonight, but also spoke out Tuesday night and have been sending us emails and messages that are very much in support of this ordinance. So it really, we're hearing it on both sides. So while I certainly feel for everyone, and particularly the businesses, I don't have the same sympathy for the Open San Benito people just because I don't think they believe in science. And I think that their actions or lack thereof, i.e. not wearing masks, are greatly contributing to the position we're in right now, which is, as I said earlier, the 5th worst in the whole state. We have to ask ourselves, why are we in such a bad position in this community? When, areas just to the north of us, for example, are nowhere near as bad off. And I don't think any of us know for sure, but I think it's fair to say that it's not because everyone is using common sense in our community, which I hear people say, well, let's just come together and all use common sense. Well, it's not happening, and the numbers are showing that. So while I hear and feel for, like I said, particularly those who are in business, I don't think that the science has changed any in the last 2 hours that we've been sitting up here, or the last week or so, where we've been looking at this, considering putting an ordinance in place. So with those beginning comments, let me just reiterate a few things that I had written down before. First of all, it is our intent with this ordinance And it's also not just with the ordinance, but in the direction that we have given to our county staff and will give to the county staff, that first and foremost, we're going to do a much better job of education and outreach. And we hope to get voluntary compliance among both residents and businesses. We're not here to try to fine anyone. We're not planning to shut anyone down. The vast majority of our people and businesses are complying, but let's face it, there is a minority, but it's a significant number of people that are not complying. And we need to do everything possible to try to educate them and eliminate any misconceptions they might have in regards to safety guidelines, and hopefully we will get their compliance. But if education and outreach is not getting compliance, we simply have to have, a tool in our toolbox for the county to address, those areas of concern. We talked about this earlier. The intent is to look at the businesses that impact the community the greatest in terms of spreading of the disease, the individuals or groups of individuals that might be doing that. That's where we're going to be focused on. We're going to be, focused on the ones that are the most egregious in defying the orders. And I can't speak for everyone, but I can assure you that my direction, the county staff will be not to go after the small businesses, but to go after the ones that are really having the greatest impact, which, by the way, will include the big box stores. And starting immediately, we're going to insist that those stores are complying with capacity numbers, as well as ensuring that people are wearing masks when they enter those stores. So once again, our goal here is not to punish anyone. The overriding goal is to save lives in our community. We are in an enormous crisis locally, and as elected officials, I believe it is our duty to do everything possible to address the health and safety of our citizens above all else. So in the end, I feel that really we have no choice but to enact this emergency ordinance. In my mind, it will be well worth it if it saves even one life of someone in our community. A few other comments. Once again, the focus of enforcement is going to be those that bring the greatest threat. The other thing I want to point out, although we've heard from a lot of businesses, is it's simply not fair to those businesses that are complying and are doing the right thing when a competitor of theirs, for example, across the street, is not complying. That's not fair. And so we have to look after those businesses as well. And let me make another point about businesses. In my mind, this is not an either-or decision that's being made. The decision before us has been painted by some as a choice of either being in support of local business by voting down this ordinance or being against them by voting for it. I would strongly argue that that is a false choice. I am voting for this ordinance, but I also will continue to strongly advocate and do everything possible to support our local businesses. Through programs like Great Plates, through financial grants from the county that we spoke about Tuesday night, through pushing to get further state and federal assistance to them as quickly as possible. Will this make our businesses whole? Of course not. I wish it would, but I'm realistic. But it will help many of them get through the worst part of this pandemic until we can move into a safer place where they can more fully open up. And let me emphasize that. That's ultimately, in my mind, the only way we can truly get our lives and local economy back to some sort of normalcy. It's to get on top of this virus, to minimize the infection rates and deaths, and get the vaccines in the arms of our residents. Doing nothing now in regards to an enforcement ordinance will only prolong the pandemic surge, and so prolong its impact on our people and businesses. The sooner we finally and effectively deal with COVID here and throughout our region, the sooner we can move forward once again, both as people and as businesses. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Supervisor Tiffany. Supervisor Hernandez?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Oh, let me double check that can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, just making sure I'm unmuted. The first thing I wanted to start leading with is I really do have a lot of respect for the new supervisors, because I know it's not an easy task to come in to a position literally in the middle of this crisis that we're dealing with and having to make tough decisions either way. So I have no animus or frustration, none whatsoever. I love the fact that we disagree, only because I think that's the goal of good jurisprudence, right? The idea of dialoguing our way into a better solution. The idea of having an amazing conversation on literally reflecting on the sounding board of our community on what the consequences are of our decision making. So, and from the consensus that I'm hearing, this is all about protecting public health. I 100% agree that it should be about protecting public health in a balanced way. And Supervisor Tiffany had mentioned that, that we have to follow the science. And I believe Supervisor Konzbicki has said it before, and I believe Supervisor Gonzalez has said it before. I'm pretty sure at one point in time, Supervisor Medina has also shared that sentiment. And with that thought, I just wanted to kind of lean into a couple latest statements from some folks that have been very much pro, supporting this lockdown and trying to address this virus. And that's Governor Andrew Cuomo. On Monday, he just said the state must start reopening its economy, despite most New Yorkers not having received the coronavirus vaccination, saying that there will be nothing left to open. That's his statement. And then I'll also leave you with this one from Mayor Lori Lightfoot. I mentioned it earlier in the beginning. She said on Thursday, restaurants and bars should open as soon as possible. And she plans on pushing for lifting the state's ban on indoor dining with Governor J.B. Pritzker. Lightfoot said it's time to give people an outlet for entertainment in an environment that is regulated and inspected, rather than dealing with speakeasy-style gatherings and crowded private parties that have repeatedly popped up in the city since indoor dining and bars were shut down in October. Let's bring it out of the shadows. Let's allow them to have some recreation in restaurants and bars where we can actually work with responsible owners and managers to regulate and protect people from COVID-19, Lightfoot said. So is this this is anti the rules of California, which I know New York is right along there, one of the stringent states, the most stringent states. The question is, and again, this is not being, like I said, with no animus sentiment, are they anti-science or do they have different science? It's just an honest question. What is the science that they're leaning on that would support this that's not obviously concurrent with our state? So on that note, supervisors, I'll leave you with this. I firmly believe, which I know you all want to protect public health. I do to 100%. I believe this virus is real, and I believe that it affects people seriously. I'm not ignoring that. But I firmly believe this ordinance will only increase the spread of this virus, since it's only sending people wanting to get out to now go home. I leave you with that, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Supervisor B. Gonzalez.
Over the
last couple of hours, I've been taking notes, and for those of you that think I'm rolling up my eyes, nothing could be further from the truth. I'm taking notes. There were roughly 50 comments that were made. The majority were opposed to us enacting any type of ordinance, and I understand, but these are some of the comments that I've been hearing for months and months as I listened to the Board of Supervisors meetings, and the former board tried to enact something. I listened in utter frustration that I couldn't reach through my telephone and ring the necks of some of the supervisors sitting up here that they didn't act. And now it's before us as supervisors in the new board to do something. And you'll keep hearing me say to do something because I don't have the answers. We here at the board, we're sitting at a place where we have a moral and ethical dilemma to do something. We need to act. We need to protect our community. One of the speakers mentioned something about getting back to the time where the gyms are open, the salons and the pools and the nail places. I mean, I wish we could do that. I hate wearing this mask. I don't lie. I hate wearing it. I hate having to impose that on other people. But we as supervisors, this legislative body, we have been entrusted to protect the community in general. And this is what we have to do. And for those of you that think that I take this task lightly, nothing could be further from the truth. I have a few notes that I had taken myself before we came into the meeting. And as you will discover over my time on the board, that whenever I am tasked to undertake anything, I will always do my homework. I do not accept anything idly, that what is presented to me, I'll do my own research to see if that indeed is being told the truth to me. Over the past 6 or 7 months, I have consulted with many community officials. I have spoken with my own personal doctors, and I asked them, if given the opportunity, what would they do? I have met with various residents and solicited their opinions and their feelings on the subject. I have read over the last 10 months countless entries on Facebook, and I hear the passion from the community. As I prepared for this meeting, I was astounded to find out that San Benito County is the 5th number in terms of COVID per capita, only behind counties such as Los Angeles, Riverside, San Bernardino, and Ventura. That is ridiculous. We are a small community, and we should not be competing for numbers of COVID to that extent. The San Benito County numbers are undeniable. Today alone, our numbers are 42 deaths, 720 active cases, 20 hospitalized, 4,778 confirmed cases, and 80 new cases. We are in a place where we must do something as a board. And I regret this action before the board has come to pass. I realize the penalty for the violation is steep, and it could be quite costly. But without a vehicle to adhere to the enforcement ordinance, we would be doing an injustice to the residents of the community. Our community must realize that we are in this together. We must work collaboratively to combat the terrible effects of this deadly virus, and we must practice all safeguards mandated by the state. We don't have the option to ignore the state. There are guidelines given to us that we have to adhere to, and as such, the residents of the community have to adhere to. I am grateful that we will be working with the city of San Juan Bautista, the city of Hollister, to work collaboratively to protect our citizenry. I appreciate the willingness of the board to want to revisit this in April to see if we can possibly relax the standards. I am pleased to see that all the enforcement options have encompassed a wide variety of agencies to use as tools for enforcement. I encourage the outreach and the education, though people may minimize it and think that it's not anything important. It is. If we can educate the community and ask them to follow the mandates and then give them a warning, then these issues, these fines, the potential administrative hearing, they're non-issues. I agree that administrative penalties should be used as an alternative enforcement mechanism to combat the negative effects of the COVID virus. I further understand that if the citizenry cannot adhere to the guidelines, we must set forth the enforcement ordinance. Otherwise, we would have no option. I do not enter this decision lightly, but for all the reasons that I stated, I have to support enforcement of this ordinance, and I will vote to enforce it tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Gonzalez. The common statement I heard throughout the night is this vote that we vote on today will close businesses. It's far from the truth. The state has an executive order that we follow. As Supervisor Gonzalez said in her statement, we have to follow these guidelines. We have to follow these executive orders. Only when an opinion comes in, if it is unlawful, will I change my mind about not following an executive order. You know, we hear about an oath. That is the oath I took. It is to follow the orders from whether it's the president or whether it's our governor. When I'm looking at what's happening right now, you know, we are dividing people, and it's sad. You know, I've visited a lot of different restaurants. I have went to several hair salons, and I feel for the individuals that aren't working at this point in time. But this vote here is to enforce what has already taken place. Several months ago, a couple times, an ordinance of this type came up during my time. I did not vote for it. But that was also when our death rate was much lower, our positivity was much lower, and our even cases were much lower. And that is a fact. You can look back at the numbers, and the numbers will support that. Things have changed. A lot of people out there that I know now have contracted COVID-19, and a couple of them have passed away. So please understand that we are enforcing something that is already in place. We just need to make sure we have the right vehicle to make this happen. I don't expect people of the county or the city to go knock on people's doors to ensure that there is only so many people in the household, or chase people down that do not wear a mask when they're walking away from people that are 6 feet distancing. But it's our job as elected officials to make sure that we take care of our community, and this is why I have to look at voting for an ordinance of this magnitude. Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
as far as housekeeping items, could I read?
Yes, ma'am. I'll hand it over to the legal counsel. Before that, does any of the supervisors have anything else to comment on? Okay, I'll send it to our legal counsel, Barbara
Okay.
Thompson.
First thing, I'd like to read the title of the ordinance for the record, which is an urgency ordinance of the Board of Supervisors of the County of San Benito, incorporating by reference and authorizing administrative penalties and civil enforcement of State of California and San Benito County Public Health Officer COVID-19 emergency orders. And a couple minor changes, like kind of just minor corrections on Section 5A. After the word enforcement officer, I'd like to add the words including but not limited. Second change is I'd like to change the title of the clerk of the board to Jennifer Frechette instead of Janet Slipsager. On Exhibit A, first bullet point, where it indicates 2.8 people, that should be 2.8 million people. And last but not least, on Exhibit B, last sentence, the words only within the unincorporated area of the county should be changed to the entire county. Thank you. With those changes being brought into the record now.
One thing I would like to add, if possible, I know there's a end date,
Yes,
bringing it back to the board.
yes,
I'd like to see if I can bring that end date back on February 23rd at our board meeting
yes. Would you like to do that just by direction to staff?
by direction to staff,
February-
if it's agreed with the ad hoc committee.
Second meeting in February?
So we
Second
would
meeting in
just
February.
Take a look at it.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Not an automatic end date, just
N- I would like to actually have it renewed on the 23rd of February.
Okay.
What this allows us to do is really not ignore it, but really pay attention to what needs to be done and if things have changed in that time, if that's all right with the ad hoc committee.
Sure.
Thank you.
I like
Good with me.
I like that date better than April, yeah. Thank you.
So,
I'll bring it back to the board. What's the wish of the board?
I'm sorry, if we could clarify, do you want it to actually expire on that date or just to have it
It
agendized?
would expire on the 24th, but we would renew it on the 23rd. Is that possible, Reed?
I'm wondering if we should,
Yeah.
instead of expire, just take a look at it. I think it's,
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's highly unlikely things are gonna be dramatically better within just over a month. So I think it's highly likely. If we look at it, we could always make a decision if things have gotten
But
better.
it will be on the agenda, and it will be
Yes.
the first thing we speak of.
Yeah, I would, because I would prefer if it, and we'll put it on that agenda for sure. I'd rather have it expire if a resolution's not adopted every, 30 or 60 days than have to re-adopt the ordinance, because every time you re-adopt the ordinance, you have to publish it.
Okay,
So, I mean, it's
see
better
the
to have a
legal-
termination date if you don't adopt a resolution every 60 days, for example, but,
Okay, so
Reed, you want?
yes.
One potential option might be to simply agendize it for potential rescission, because if you were to repeal the ordinance, it would be immediately effective. So if you place that on for discussion on February 23rd, and the board were to take that action based on some changed circumstances, it would take it off the books immediately without having to worry about further resolutions or amendments. But it can be kind of how you like to skin the cat.
Are you okay with it being on the agenda for potential rescission?
yes, I'm okay to have it on the agenda for potential rescission.
Okay. Can we have a vote on that?
Yeah,
Because
well-
I would like to see it as a review as opposed to a potential revision.
I think we're talking semantics
is-
here. Mr. Chair, I apologize.
No, go ahead.
I think we're talking semantics. I think whether you say it's a potential rescission or you say it's a review, it's really the same thing. And if Mark or Chairman Medina feels more comfortable with the potential rescission, I think that's better than going back and forth on that detail, just because we're really talking about the same effective thing here.
Okay.
What's the wish of the board?
Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Yes, please.
We have to do a roll call vote.
Sorry.
I'll make a motion that we approve the ordinance with the changes detailed by Barbara and by yourself, Mark.
Second.
To the maker of the motion, can you make a motion to accept introduction, waive formal reading, and adopt the urgency ordinance, and also to include the motion to adopt the resolution, if that's the intent?
Say that again.
I'm sorry, to make a motion to accept introduction, waive formal reading, and adopt the urgency ordinance, and then also include the adoption of the resolution, if that's what you'd like.
Okay, is there a place for me to read that?
On
or-
page 15.
Okay, I'm sorry.
No, I'm sorry.
Still learning here.
There's 15.
Mr. Chair, if I may,
We are in the middle of a motion right now, correct? Wait till the motion's done, then you can speak.
Okay, Okay, I'll make a motion to accept the introduction, waive formal reading, and adopt an urgency ordinance authorizing civil enforcement of COVID-19, state executive orders, and public health officer orders Directives and guidance having the force of law limited the duration of the existence of the COVID-19 declared state of emergency. I'll make that motion, which would include the revisions suggested by Barbara and Mark.
And I second
And
that.
also the adoption of the resolution too?
And also the adoption of the resolution as well.
Second.
Mr. Chair.
Is there any
For
discussion?
further questions.
Yeah, further questions, any discussion? Supervisor Hernandez?
Yeah, Mr. Chair. Yes, thank you. I was hoping the board would consider, since this is going to be an ongoing process, it sounds like, for dialogue, that it would include stakeholders from the business community into these conversations, into the ad hoc going forward, since I think it would be good for transparency purposes to allow someone in the process to understand the implications of this rollout and ultimately dialogue. So hopefully it would even encourage a little bit of a calming effect in the community.
Mr. Chair? I appreciate the sentiment. You know, I think the more the merrier as far as the public. I would only point out that as far as I know, the ad hoc in the next several weeks will be really considering the business grants and outreach and not as much the enforcement part. And we'll be coming back to that obviously, but just for the sake of, you know, clarity on that. Is there another way we could involve the public? Like we did the focus groups, you know, we could do town hall type environments. I just don't know if the ad hoc committee is necessarily the appropriate place for considering what we're going to be discussing as far as the grants and the outreach.
Yeah, excuse me, I would agree. I understand your sentiment, Supervisor Hernandez, and I think there should be some opportunity to get further input from the business community. I heard some of the comments this evening, or one comment about ad hoc. It really wouldn't have been appropriate, since the ad hoc was really a committee of two that were both supervisors to get the emergency ordinance in place. And given in fact it was emergency, there certainly wasn't time, nor was it, I think, appropriate for community involvement at that point. But I think going forward, it's something we can look at. But as Supervisor Kosmicki pointed out, he and I will be focusing immediately this next week on the grant program, getting money out to our local businesses.
But the question here is, did you want to add this as a friendly change to the motion here, or do you want to just table this to another time where we'll do the focus
Mr.
group?
Chair, if I may.
Yes, Peter.
With all due respect to the new supervisors, I was involved in the ad hoc last year. I'm not part of it, obviously, anymore, but I do have some experience, obviously, and the intent of that ad hoc, and you can look at the minutes, you could pull them up, very specific and intentional. There was a lot of back and forth disagreement, definitely, behind the scenes, because the ultimate sentiment, which didn't happen that way, was we want input from the business community, because since we're having rules that apply to them, they should be able to give us in real time the consequences and the implications of our decision making. But the way that these focus groups were set up, it was very much a one-way street. There was a moderator that would basically cut off dialogue. It wasn't really a two-way dialogue. Nonetheless, I obviously went with trying to figure out how to manage a conversation without trying to have a lot of back and forth and division. But I think it kind of angered the folks that were involved with these a little bit more. So long and short, I don't think it would be wise to move forward, especially since emotions are even higher now.
Well, once again, Peter,
not
with all due
include them.
respect, the motion on the floor, did you want to do a friendly amendment? That's what the question here is.
I don't see.
Well, I'm just sharing my sentiment. It doesn't sound like it's going to get support.
Yeah, they don't.
Motion. I think it's a separate.
It's a separate item, so.
And let me just, excuse me, let me just mention again, Supervisor Hernandez. Certainly, I think it's the intent for both Supervisor Kosmicki and myself that we would get input from the business community in regards to certainly the granting, much like you and Supervisor Botello did this past year, talking to the Chamber of Commerce and as well and other businesses. So, but I think that's a separate issue from this motion.
Yeah, let's
what
get
we're
back, let's
addressing
get back to
tonight.
business. There was a motion on the floor by Supervisor Tiffany. It was second by Supervisor Gonzalez. We'll do a roll call vote here.
Aye.
No.
Yes.
Yes.
Aye.
The ayes have it, 4-1. Thank you very much. Is there a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
Second.
Second? Thank you.
Goodbye.